Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you're watching second and final part of What If Naruto accidentally goes to another world and joined X-Men. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Institute, 6 a.m. The institute that housed Babel's mutants, or the gifted as Xavier liked to refer to them, had a lone figure wandering its halls as the figure proceeded down the corridor. He eventually arrived at the senior students' hall. A thin layer of chakra came to life at the ends of the hallways, preventing sound from escaping, and the figure quickly made a quick hand sign, which caused the previously invisible seals along the walls to emit a dull light. The figure smiled and said, "Man, I love silencing seals," before letting out another laugh. The last time he told them to get enough sleep, they overslept, but this time they heeded his advice. He then connected the electric guitar he was carrying to the amplifier he had brought. He took a breath and started strumming notes. If you're curious about what he strummed, it was the opening to Creed's song, "Suddenly," which I don't own. I'm happy to report that he defiantly achieved the desired outcome. The teens who had been asleep suddenly woke up and rushed out of their rooms, screaming. What he liked best was that Evan and Kurt's rooms were right next to each other, so when they both rushed out, they collided head-on and ended up in a heap. The figure that was on the ground at the moment grabbed his sides and responded, "Ha ha ha. Oh man, I wish I videotaped this. Oh wait, I did." Sensing the danger he had put himself in, the students all rounded on him and hissed, "Naruto." The blonde muttered the word, "Crap," with good reason, and he didn't like the look in their eyes when the girls suddenly held frying pans and the blonde exploded in a puff of smoke as soon as the first blow struck, indicating that it was a clone. Glancing around, they noticed the blonde at the end of the hallway holding his prank tools and a camera. The blonde smiled and waved at them before yelling. Before he vanished in a cloud of smoke, he said, "Be ready in an hour for training." Kitty yelled, "Damn it Naruto, you are so dead when I get my hands on you." Rogue's left eyebrow twitched as she added, "You know I'm tired of you making decisions without me. We are going to kill Naruto." A chill went up the blonde's spine on the opposite side of the institute. Aw crap. Around the institute, in a meadow, the Jinchuriki asked, "So, Kyubi, where do you think women get those damn blasted frying pans out of nowhere?" He had been tormented by this question for years. He and Jiraiya would constantly search for answers but were never successful. Oh great demon lord. So why not ask him himself? Well, you see, the demon lord struggled to find the answer and finally said, I got nothing." He had spent the better part of a century trying to answer the question, and never in the millennia that he had been alive had he been able to do so. He heard shuffling on the ground beneath him before he could respond. Glancing down from his perch in the tree, the blonde realized it was his brats, and he leapt down so softly that it sounded more like someone gently closing his book. "Yo, good morning, again," was the blonde's sheepish response as they all regarded him with suspicion. Kitty got right to the point, grinning sweetly at Naruto and cracking her knuckles. "Just get on with it, Naruto. If you don't give me something to do, I might hurt you." The ninja raised his hands peacefully and said, Sure. All right, so you all understand chakras fairly well and have some control over them now. However, it's time to take the next step in managing it," the blonde who was attracting their attention said. "All right, so what comes next? The better my control, the sooner I can remove the glasses," Scott thought. Taking in their expressions, the blonde replied, "Right, so the next step is tree climbing." Damn, deja vu, the blonde thought. Recalling his genin days, the blonde snapped out of it and chose to perform a demonstration, just like Kakashi dad. "In Konoha, it's called tree climbing because we practice with trees, but the name kind of always confuses people because it's actually surface walking. The key is to collect the proper amount of chakra at the soles of your feet and then maintain a constant flow that enables you to stay on the surface." The jailer threw a kunai in front of each of them and said, "I suggest a running start to help you along, and don't give me those looks. You've all seen me do it a dozen times. Oh, and here, mark your progress with the kunai." After deciding to get started, the teenagers picked up the kunai, closed their eyes, and started walking toward a tree. Kitty managed to climb 3 feet before slipping, Kurt went 4, and Jean went 3, but Scott, Rogue, and Evan were blasted off the trunk after only 2 feet. As he leapt back up to his perch, the blonde grinned and said, "Oh yeah, a piece of advice: too little and you slip off, too much and you get blasted off." "Naruto, you could have warned us, damn you," Rogue called out, annoyed at the boy. Naruto smiled and said, "Sorry, babe, I think a more hands-on approach gets better results." He then opened an orange book and started reading, but he kept sending them glances to see how they were doing. As he observed their gradual progress, the blonde thought, "Damn, this is going to take a while." At 5 in the morning, 2 weeks later, "Students, I must ask you to gather downstairs immediately. Xavier said in his mind. Naruto woke up and saw that the girls had entered his room again, but he didn't mind because he had decided to wake them up. Come on, angels, let's see what he wants, he said gently. Rogue put a pillow over her head and called out, 5 more minutes. The blonde muttered, man, why'd I always get the harder jobs? As he continued to try to wake them up. After 5 minutes. What's going on, Charles? As the others showed up looking dazed, Naruto leaned against the wall and held up Kitty and Rogue before asking. The students were awakened and alerted when Xavier said, I apologize for the late hour, but I just received an urgent summon from Captain Stone. His voice was solemn and serious. From the prison, Captain Stone? Scott inquired. Hey, we're not discussing another Juggernaut release, are we? Evan was a little tense when he asked, recalling the previous incident. Professor X added, no, at least not yet, but his containment unit has begun to fail. Scott was already moving when he called out, gang, let's move, we'll be suited up and ready to go in 5. No, I'll be going alone, the teenager's caregiver said. In an agitated tone, Naruto said, what are you talking about, Charles? I'm going with you there, and there's no way I can miss out on fighting that dude. The blonde said, come on, Charles, I need a fight. The man who had previously defeated Logan could leave. Xavier noticed the blonde's frown and said, I'm sorry, Naruto, but with Aurora away in Africa and Logan out on the open road, you are the only one I can trust to take care of the children. He knew he wanted to fight his sibling, but he had no other option. The blonde pouted and muttered, okay, then I'll stay behind this one time, Charles, next time I get to fight him. You are insane. Naruto, why in the world would you want to face that guy? Evan asked, a little taken aback because, in all honesty, he was growing accustomed to Naruto's bizarre theories. After the professor wheeled into the elevator and said, yes, very well, now I'll see you all in a few days, the teenagers started to return to their rooms. All right, since we're already awake, how about doing some danger room calisthenics to start the day? What are your thoughts? Scott inquired. Evan walked past him and yelled, forget it, man, I'm going back to bed. Kurt yawned and said, Scott, my friend, just go back to sleep. As he carried the girls to bed, Naruto muttered, oh, just shut up and go to bed, Scott, before I throw you in the danger room and put on my training course. This caused Jean to laugh at his antics and Scott to turn pale. After a few days, at Bayville High, hey Kitty, what exciting plans do you have for this weekend? Misty approached her from behind and inquired. Kitty responded, nothing, my ear has been to the ground all week, but the parties are as good as dry, recalling a few parties she had attended with Naruto. If only we knew someone whose parents were gone for the weekend, we could throw our own party, said Misty. Kitty smiled in response, thinking quickly, hey, you know something? At the locker rooms, Kitty told the others and then waited to see how they responded. Evan started, yeah, while the professors are away. When Kurt jumped off his handstand, he said, the kids can play. And play it loud, Kitty added, pleased that everyone was following along. While standing next to Naruto, who was considering it, Rogue was reminded, reality check people, Scott and Jean, despite her desire for the party. Oh yeah, murmured the others, sad that their enjoyment would be spoiled. Kurt smiled as he glanced at the bored-looking blonde and reminded him, yes, a problem, but remember Naruto here is in charge. As Naruto responded, and why the hell should I, we can use that time to train. Kitty used what he called the puppy eye jutsu to lean against Naruto and said, aw come on Naruto, pretty please. You know that's not fair, smiled and shot back the blonde. So, is the answer yes? Rogue inquired. No, the blonde replied. In reality, he would give them anything they wanted. He just enjoyed playing with them. The two girls sighed, looked at one another, nodded, and pressed their bodies against him, whispering certain activities into his ears, which caused the blonde to blush a little. Damn, they know what I like, the blonde thought. Fantastic, but what about Jean and Scott? Evan, who sees them as his own brothers and sisters, asked, trying to forget what he had just witnessed. It seemed strange to him to see them flirting like that in front of him. The blonde responded, oh, don't worry about them, already formulating a strategy. Cliff face. 1 hour prior to the celebration, Jean waved goodbye and then approached Scott, saying, see you tomorrow, Duncan. Hi, Jean sat on the car's hood and said, hello. So what's going on? Scott inquired, attempting to start a discussion. I don't know, you tell me. Kitty said you wanted to meet me up here. What, that's what Naruto told me. Oh, I see what's going on. Yeah, it seems that we've been, Jean started, but Scott cut her off. Aren't you being cunning once more? What? Jean exclaimed, startled but simultaneously relieved. The dispute between the two began when Scott said, "You wanted to get me up here but blame it on someone else. You really are jealous of Terra, aren't you?" Kurt managed to teleport himself, Naruto, and Kitty behind the car during this time while Kitty managed to retrieve Jean's cell phone. Naruto was able to swiftly remove the keys from the ignition. The blonde thought, "Damn, they suck when they fight with each other," as they made their way to the car's trunk, where Kurt was prepared to teleport them back to the mansion. A few hours following the start of the celebration, Bobby exclaimed, "Oi Naruto, we got another one," as he pulled a faintly unconscious man to one of the corners where a number of other people were present. While dancing with the girls, the blonde exclaimed, "Damn, they never learn," and then burst out laughing. "Well, they wouldn't be like that if you didn't put that seal on the cabinet," replied Rogue. "Hey, is it my fault that they can't keep their greedy paws off my ramen cabinet?" replied the brunette. In order to protect it tonight, he had applied a startling seal. They were drawn to Naruto's bracelet when it exploded before they could carry on the conversation. "Fuck, get the others," was the exclamation Naruto heard as he headed to the danger room. The last thing he needed was an idiot there. Outside the danger room, Spike said, "Hey Naruto, what the heck is happening?" since he and the other three were already dressed. The blonde, already dressed in his Junin uniform, replied, "Someone has freaking control of the room. I can't even open the door." Nightcrawler proposed, "I'll just shut it down from inside." The ninja responded, emphasizing the last part, "Fine, go, but be careful." Kurt nodded to the blonde and teleported into the room. Everyone became tense while they waited for him to return, which took several minutes. Shadowcat muttered, "Come on Kurt, it shouldn't take you this long," as she approached the door and briefly went inside to check what was wrong before coming back a moment later. "Kurt's been hit." The blonde growled, "That's it, we're going in," as he and the others took Shadowcat's hand to allow her to phase them in. However, they had to disperse as soon as they stepped inside because lasers started shooting at them. Spike had to dodge more laser fire after he returned fire and skewered its components to shut it down while it was being pursued by a clawed hand. In the meantime, Rogue had to avoid a number of enormous spiked balls that were descending on her from a number of windmills. Both managed to get to Kurt and encircle him in an attempt to shield him from harm. Rogue urged Kurt to wake up as she and Evan picked him up. Meanwhile, another claw snagged Shadowcat, and Naruto used Kei's no Yaiba, Blade of Wind, to cut the claw in half before it could fire. As he used the wind blade to cut at some shuriken, Naruto yelled, "Move it, Kitty, get the others out of here." Kitty started to argue with his reasoning, but how could they have left him here to deal with everything? As he slashed at the approaching swarm of claws, the blonde said with a sense of finality, "Don't argue with me, Kitty. I can heal, you guys can't." Kitty obeyed his commands and started walking in the direction of the others before realizing that Naruto was being pursued by a claw that had managed to evade him. To make matters worse, she was startled by the rising columns of walls, which caused her to lose focus and crash into a wall, knocking her unconscious after completing the obstacles. The blonde hurried after her after noticing that she was unconscious. When Rogue, Evan, and Kurt arrived at them, hiding from the lasers between the walls, she asked, "Is she out?" and received a nod. However, the part they were on went down and the center of the room rose before they could unwind. Two one-ton balls started rolling in their direction before they could react. "Aw man, this isn't good. Wake up Kurt," the blonde exclaimed, putting his hand on the blue-furred teenager and causing a lightning-fast chakra surge to awaken him. Kurt finally took in their predicament and exclaimed, "Huh, what's going on? What the heck did you guys do?" The blonde took Kitty in his arms and said, "No talking, take us out of here," while Evan held onto his shoulder. Kurt yelled, "I'm on it," as he abruptly teleported them to one of the corridors. Nearby hallway, Kurt put Kitty down and then woke her up, asking the blonde, "Don't you think that was cutting it close, Kurt?" Kurt defended himself by saying, Sorry, but can you blame me? I was shot by lasers as soon as I got in." Prior to that, an alarm was heard in the hallway. "System has been compromised, initiating Defcon 4. "Ah crap," the blonde, who was definitely not good, muttered. "Wait, what's Defcon 4 feet?" Evan asked, perplexed by the blonde's agitated expression. As he led them down the hallway, where they had to dodge a variety of weapons, he gave the blonde the order, "I'll tell you later, for now move people, we have to find out who the fuck has control of Cerebro." Which, up until a flamethrower was activated and forced them to back off. They all avoided. The teenagers encountered yet another flame attack as they made their way down the hallway. The order was given by cursing the blonde. "Scatter, meet up in the east sector," caused Kitty to grab Rogue before phasing through the wall to safety, and Kurt to rag onto Evan before teleporting. His brow quirked as he left the blonde there while fishing and creating hand seals. The blonde thought, tonight was not going as planned, so much for giving the brats some time off. He then called out Sweden. Sweejenheki, water release. Water encampment wall, which caused water particles in the air to gather around him in a spinning vortex, protecting him from harm but causing steam to rise from the collision of the fire and water. The blonde swiftly used this as cover to execute the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, which he used to flee in the direction of the others. Sector East. Jean and Scott, who managed to enter the east sector through the waterfall entrance, were currently hacking into the mainframe in an attempt to find the person in Cerebro, bringing up a teenage boy on the screen. Who is that? As the others entered the room through their different escape routes, Scott responded, I have no idea, I think he's one of Kitty's friends. Yeah, he liked to call himself Arcade. He's a computer game nut, replied Kitty. Jean questioned, I party guess I presumed. Kitty defended herself by saying, yeah, but I don't know how he got into Cerebro, before Jean turned to face a bored-looking Naruto. And you allowed them to throw a party after you, the professor, left you in charge? Questioned Jean. They wanted a party, and Charles said that as long as a professor is present, which I am, parties are permitted. Or would you prefer to be in training right now? The last time he had Jean and Scott running up and down trees for 5 hours with only 5-minute breaks every hour, he asked the blonde cheekily, making them both a little pale. The blonde noticed the boy was staring at them and said, didn't think so, but besides your tortu, I mean training, we have to take out the nerd. The boy then called out in awe. Whoa, that's awesome that you're staring at me. Here's a quick hello wave and feedback. Before the room was electrically charged, shocking everyone and making them spasm in pain. Well, everyone except Naruto, who just stood there scratching his head while everyone else fled. The blonde muttered, just great, we got a nerd waving at us. The blonde walked away, threw a kunai at the camera that was following him, and then vanished in a flash of speed. I could have sworn that I put the voltage higher. Damn it, Aurora must have changed the setting from lethal to mild. Damn that women won't let me have any fun, he thought aloud. The Cerebro? Damn, that guy is good. Now where are you? Arcade asked, searching for the blonde without spotting a figure standing behind him or a vent opening. Hey, how are you? Arcade muttered, that blonde guy, help me find him, on the screen, then turned to see a patch of yellow hair before being punched in the temple, knocking him unconscious. Hee, priceless, the blonde muttered as he pulled him away. After the party, the living room, the teenager who had just been awakened by Naruto muttered, oh, don't be mad guys, I'm sorry. Would you mind telling us what you were doing inside? Scott asked, crossing his arms. Couldn't resist. Such an awesome mainframe. That game rules. Game? Questioned Jean. Naruto interrupted him by raising his hand before he could say anything more. Yeah, and the players rocked, they had these really cool powers. The blonde accompanied the boy and said, all right, we get it, I make awesome games. Oh, and the taxi is outside, so get going. Get a date, and get a better hobby, he said, pulling the boy outside before shutting the door. As he collapsed onto the coach, next to Kitty and Rogue, the blonde exclaimed, damn it, never again will I be in charge of a party for you guys. Evan countered, come on, Naruto, it wasn't that bad. I thought I told you guys only a few people, the blonde said, leaning his head back and closing his eyes. Look at the house, it's trashed. We did, but they invited some friends who in turn invited some more, and well, you know where it goes from there, replied Kurt. He made 24 clones and told them to get to work before leaving with the others to sleep. Just forget it and go to sleep. I'll handle the cleanup, but you owe me, and remember this night never, and I mean never, happened, he said. In the morning of the following day, Institute, how was your journey, then? As he sat on the library sofa, the blonde asked. Everything went well, it was only a minor component, but still could have caused a malfunction releasing Kane, replied the instructor. The blonde retorted, I told you I should have gone with you, what if he got out? He required a good battle. After hearing the other people's opinions, Xavier responded, perhaps, but maybe it was for the best for you to stay, after all you handled the party situation quite well. So you learned, huh? The blonde responded, I was going to tell you, something about it keeps bothering me, adopting a more solemn tone. Precisely what I was thinking, everything was far too well orchestrated, myself trip away just to gain access to the mansion. Who and why remained the questions left the two of them to assess the situation after the blonde was finished. After a few days, Bayville High. Who the hell trashed the bathroom, man? As Kurt and Kitty walked together, having already dropped Rogue off at her class, the blonde thought aloud. Kurt's response was, I don't know, but they say it was Mr. McCoy. After Kurt informed them that the bathroom had been destroyed, Kitty argued with him, McCoy, are you crazy? He wouldn't do anything like that. As they arrived at Kitty's class, Kurt retorted, I'm serious, you should have seen him in chemistry. He was totally losing it and no one has seen him around since. Kitty shot back, Kurt's the coolest and nicest teacher we have around here. She gestured to her teacher, saying, unlike Mrs. Hawkins in here. I have a massive geometry test on Friday and so not ready. Bye. Kitty then leaned up and kissed Naruto. In support of Kitty's earlier defense, the blonde added, chill Kurt, Kitty has the right idea. McCoy is the one of the teachers I actually get along with, and who knows, maybe he's having a bad day, happens to everyone. Kurt said, yeah, you guys are probably right, just a couple of rumors, and the blonde nodded, despite the blonde's thought, are you losing control, Hank? Following school, institute, sigh, is Evan still absent? Inquired the nin. Kurt replied, no, he never returned to class after leaving. Well, we can't wait for him, we'll just have to start the simulation, stated Scott. Wait, that will expose Rogue, who will protect her, questioned Jean. Rogue replied, just forget it, I can handle myself. Before creating a clone and having it change into Evan, the blonde said, sorry, babe, no can do when going into missions, always have at least someone watching your back. Before leaving, the jailer yelled, not as good as the original, but he should perform as well as him for now, while I go fetch our little runaway. As Aurora explained the simulation mission, her mind kept returning to her missing nephew, asking, where are you, Evan? All right, people, let's get moving, now the mission is. Bayville Park. Evan had taken a shortcut through the park to the mansion because he was worried about being late, but he stopped when he thought he heard a familiar voice. He went down to find Mr. McCoy after learning that the source was coming from the location where the school orchestra typically performed. If that which he avouches does appear, there is no flying hence or nor here. Evan approached Mr. McCoy to get his attention and said, Mr. McCoy? If you say anything untrue, you will be hanged on your next tree until starvation takes you. The man yelled as he approached Evan, seemingly under a compulsion. Evan responded with concern in his eyes as he backed up to the wall, saying, if this is about cutting class, I'm sorry, seriously teach, I'm not trying to play you, you got my attention now. We weren't concerned if the man attacked him, instead, he was concerned about what he would do. Evan was roughly dragged away before they could land, and the man, seemingly still possessed, threw his hands next to his head, causing the wall to crack under the pressure. The teenager turned and saw Naruto standing in front of him, looking at McCoy with a passive expression on his face. The blonde kept his gaze fixed on the man as he shook his head in an attempt to regain composure and yelled, Evan, go home, you're late, I'll be there in a while. Evan, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, it's just that you caught me at a bad time, apologized the individual. The young man said, it's okay, teach, I understand, before obeying orders and heading to the mansion. The blonde approached the man and said, you all right, Hank? Since Naruto was one of the few students he permitted to address him by his first name, the man sincerely replied, yeah, I think I'll be okay, thanks for helping, Evan. The blonde, startling man said, forget about it, it's my job to, but aside from that, are you losing control? Trying to defend himself, Hank started, I don't know what you're talking about, Naruto. Forget it, Hank, I know everything, I know what you are and that you know what I am, replied the brunette. The man, who was having trouble keeping himself together, asked, so what now? Before guiding the man to his car and his destination, Xavier, the blonde said, I think it's time for you to pay an old friend a visit. Xavier's private study at the institute. As the blonde ninja leaned against the wall and silently watched the two, the struggling man put his hands on Xavier's desk and begged, you reached out to me when I was young, hey, I realize now that I should have listened. I can't control it anymore, Professor, not by myself, I need your help. I hate to teach, but I can't trust you right now, not when you can lose your temper and hurt people around you. The professor analyzed what might be wrong with Hank and asked, tell me, Hank, what have you been feeling? The response that caught Naruto's attention was, it's like I have an animal inside of me, a beast, and it's tearing me to pieces. Naruto was aware that the man was a mutant and couldn't hide anything from a ninja, but he wasn't sure what the mutation was. He wasn't referring to Kyuubi, and it appeared that he wasn't the only one with inner demons. But somehow you were able to suppress it all these years, how? Through a serum I created, but it's not working anymore, please you have to help me before somebody gets hurt, asked the individual. Of course it's not working anymore, Hank. Animal adapt to the situation, though it seems that your serum was potent enough to keep it from adapting for a while. Now that it has, it wants out, explained the blonde. But even so, could Charles please assist me? The man said. The professor wheeled out from behind the desk towards the man and said, have a seat. He then searched the man's mind. leaving the blonde to think for himself before the professor jolted back to interrupt them. What did you see? Hank grimly inquired. The telepath replied, I'm sorry, Hank, but there is nothing I can do for you. No, don't say that I'm you dangerous to be trusted. Agreed. Which means you may have to make certain sacrifices until you have it under control. Perhaps Naruto can assist you, replied the professor. I don't know if I can. The kids are different, their mutations are awake and thriving. I might be able to help them train them, but only they can control them. I can't teach you to suppress it, it's a part of you, replied the blonde after they discussed it. You two don't understand, teaching is my life, I'm nothing without it. Your mutation is Naruto said a part of you. The only way to suppress it is with your own will. The muscular man countered, I've tried, but you gave up teach after depending on the drug, only you can control it, said the brunette. As he walked away, the broken man said, I can't. I'm just exhausted and can't fight it anymore. Thank you both, I'll take my leave now. Watching a broken man go, leaving the two behind with a sigh, the blonde left and made his way to the kitchen, where he was happy to see the girls. The blonde's thoughts of assisting Hank were diverted when he asked, Love, what's that on your head? Kitty smiled and said, You like it, it's supposed to stimulate brain power. The blonde gave him a blank stare before turning to face Rogue, who was trying not to laugh. The blonde questioned, and you didn't tell her why? Rogue giggled and said, Hey, is it my fault she falls for everything on TV? Unaware of what they were discussing, Kitty asked, What are the two of you talking about? The blonde replied, Love, the hat is unique, but not you. What are you talking about? He means you look like an idiot, was Rogue's half-hearted response. In reality, she was about to tell her to take it off, but Naruto entered, so why not make them laugh? Causing Kitty to notice her reflection being called out as she looked into one of the pans. Why didn't you tell me I looked so bad? The blonde put his hands around her waist and said, Cause you couldn't look bad to me. Love, to me you're one of the most beautiful objects the eye can see. Kitty blushed and Rogue gave him a jealous glare, which made the blonde laugh. The blonde exclaimed, You know that you're beautiful too, Rogue, as she embraced her. The blonde asked, So why exactly are you wearing that? He had a suspicion, but wanted to be certain. Well, you are aware of that enormous geometry test, started ex-girl. Rogue smiled jokingly and said, Kitty, you could be so naive, you know that, right? In an attempt to defuse the situation before it started, the blonde added, And that naiveness is one of the many things I like about you. As she led them upstairs, the blonde exclaimed, Now come on, I think it's about time I taught you the ninja way of passing one of those damn tests. Reminding himself to burn it later, he grabbed the hat on his way out and tossed it in the trash. 8 p.m. the following day, before the channel shifted to a live interview with Principal Kelly, the reporter said, A state of emergency has been declared throughout the city as reports of a wild beast continue to flood in. As the X-Men gathered, the screen was switched off and replaced with a map of the city. I've seen the beast with my own eyes and I know who it is. Hank McCoy, a chemistry teacher here, he's gone mad, the speaker said. Evan muttered, Oh man. Teach? Wolverine looked at the screen and said, It's obvious he's heading north based on sightings and the wake of damage. As the X-Men took off, Xavier added, Let's head him off, and remember wasn't him hurt. After entering the garage, the blonde drew Kitty and Rogue apart from the others and embraced them both before saying, Please keep safe and don't take any chances that aren't necessary. Rogue replied, Don't worry, Naruto, we'll be fine. Just call me when you spot him. If the professor wants him the least hurt possible, it better be me and Logan handling the job. Kitty and Rogue ran off towards the X-truck, and Naruto sighed before he and Logan decided to use Junin speed to move on foot. Don't worry Naruto, we will, Mother, Kitty teased him. Park in Bayville, the blonde had been instructed to wait at the location where the arts were performed after looking for Hank, as that was where Hank was allegedly going. The blonde asked aloud, Where are you, Hank? And then, as if in response, heard a growl emerge from the darkness. Naruto spun around and caught Hank in mid-leap, but the blonde's weight and speed caused him to fall on his back, barely stopping Hank. You're approaching me all wrong, Hank. Never attack someone who has existed in the shadows. From the shadows, Naruto yelled. The blonde yelled, Damn it, get off, as he kicked the man-turned beast away, landing in a crouch and snarling at him. Made contact with Hank, so make your way over here. He isn't going anyplace, the blonde muttered. Clutching the communicator at his wrist, the beast growled before charging at him. The blonde charged as well and punched the creature, saying, Yeah, well, growl at you too, buddy. Now shut up and let Hank free. Who dismissed it before attacking him, taking him by surprise, and hurling him toward the ceiling. where he made contact and brought a fragment of the ceiling down with him as he held his dislocated shoulder. The blonde thought, definitely Junin's strength and speed. The others eventually arrived. Evan was yelled at to, come on teach fight it this isn't you, as he attempted to pass Hank. But Logan had to save him because the beast was pursuing him. Logan was fighting the beast, but he wasn't going to be his bitch because he was trying to avoid hurting him. He was kicking and punching him, but they were evaded or blocked. Naruto quickly caught up to Logan and helped hold the beast down by popping his shoulder back into position, albeit with difficulty. Logan grabbed an arm and said, damn it, any way to calm him down? According to Evan, I might have a way. He was struggling, and the blonde said, then do it. He could definitely hold him down if he wanted to use all of his strength and break a few bones, but he wasn't sure Xavier would like that. Evan read the poem Hank had previously given him, which seemed to calm the beast and give the professor the opportunity he needed to speak with Hank. Show his eyes and grieve his heart. Come like shadows so depart, sleep shall neither night or day hang upon his penthouse lit. He shall live a man forbid weary nights, he shall live 9 times 9 shall he dwindle peak and pine. Thou his part cannot be lost yet it shall be carelessly tossed. Evan then sank, knocked out. The blonde stood up and said, aw man what a night, why can't there ever be a dull day? Kitty wiped the blood from his face after he had been cut by a clawed hand during the struggle. As Logan and Scott lifted Hank's body, Logan said, let's just get out of here before the cops show up. The following morning, at the library as he gazed into a mirror, Hank exclaimed, I still look like a monster. Xavier replied, you're in the one place that doesn't matter now. I can still feel it though, inside. Naruto sympathized with Hank, saying, you always will. That thing is a part of you whether you like it or not. He wasn't referring to Kyuubi, and he could still feel them scratching at him in the back of his mind. The worst part is the very thing I feared has happened. My teaching days are over now that I look like this. Not so teach, the professor can outfit you with an image inducer like Kurt, suggested Evan. To look like whom? Hank McCoy, he's a wanted fugitive. Evan went on, but you can be anybody. I can't risk it because the beast inside is trying to claw its way out, Hank said glumly. Xavier suggested that Hank join them, saying, what you need Hank are students who know all your secrets, who have secrets of their own and who need a man of your compassion to teach them. I don't know, the blonde smiled kindly and said, go for it, Hank, I do it all the time and it's not that bad, just don't let them convince you to throw a party. The blue-furred man smiled back, I guess I could try, plus it should be fun if you can handle it. The kitchen as Naruto, Hank, and Evan entered, Xavier yelled, everyone, please give me your attention and say hello to the Institute's newest faculty member. Welcome Mr. McCoy. Jean said. The newly named beast smiled and said, thank you, but from now on I'm not just Mr. McCoy, you can call me Beast. That day, at midnight he jolted awake in his bed and looked around wildly, as though he was waiting for someone to peer out of the shadows panting. He tried to reassure himself by saying that he was grateful the girls hadn't broken in that evening because he couldn't allow them to see him in this state. Crumbling. Even though he had long since banished his demons, they would occasionally reappear for a variety of reasons. He kept saying to himself, just a nightmare. Even though he knew it wouldn't help much because the images were haunting him, he turned and grabbed his clock, which showed that it was October 1st today. He knew that it was only a matter of time and that things would only get worse as time went on, but he would wait. He had to. A week later in the morning as he walked down the stairs, exhausted, the blonde thought, just hang in there, he just said, I'll be waiting outside, ignoring the kitchen, then went outside, got into his car, turned on some music, and tried to relax. The shinobi, his eyes flashing crimson as he gripped the steering wheel, growled, damn it Namikaze, calm down. You have faced armies and seen death in the face. These stupid little nightmares are nothing, damn it, nothing. His chakra was rising too much, and he knew he needed to calm it down. He took a deep breath and controlled it just as the girls were getting close to the car. As Rogue took the side seat and Kitty slipped into the back of the car, she said, hey Naruto, are you okay? The blonde smiled strangely and avoided looking at them, saying, yeah, I'm just a bit tired. Rogue tried to look him in the eyes and said, are you sure? You seem kind of out of it. The blonde yawned and said, yeah, just fine, just tired, hoping they would forget about it. Kitty looked at Rouge and said, well, if you say so. They could tell something was off because he had never looked away from them. In addition, he would constantly appear preoccupied, as though he was waiting for something to happen. Dark rings had started to form beneath his eyes, and he had become paler. He would simply brush off their concerns and claim he was simply working on an idea whenever they inquired about anything. Following classes, Institute. As he turned away from the girls on the mansion's steps, the blonde exclaimed, I'll see you two later, okay? Rogue raised an eyebrow and said, "Wait, where are you going?" The blonde replied, "I just need to stretch my legs," lying plainly. Remembering how Logan believed that throwing kunai would hasten their tree-climbing progress, Kitty called out, "Just be back soon, alright? Last time you left us with Logan for so long he went overboard." The blonde laughed and said, "Yeah, sure," before vanishing in a cloud of smoke. Rooftop in the downtown area, the blonde sighed as he leaned against a building's ledge, thinking it would be worse than what he had already encountered. He still only had the nightmares. The ones from his early years. And nothing unusual had happened to him. However, he was unable to get rid of the sensation that he was being followed. The shinobi quickly closed his eyes before using his senses to feel for any chakra signatures. He only felt his own. The blonde sat down and watched the busy street below, murmuring, "Maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe they're still locked away." "Don't count on it, Kit. You know as well as I do that they've been released," the kitsune then added. "What I don't understand is why you of all people would be so afraid of these pathetic little dreams." With his head bent, the blonde muttered, "I don't fear the past, but there is a part of me that won't walk away from it. I am not afraid, Kyubi, just stressed." "Then you're a shinobi, so let go, brat." The demonic fox roared out that he would not tolerate a weak jailer. "I'm trying, you boss," the blonde began, but before he could say another word, he sensed someone standing over him. When the blonde looked up, he saw something he never would have imagined. A Konoha Anbu standing above him, his blade already descending for the kill based solely on instinct. The blonde shifted to the side and attempted to punch the shinobi, but it was unsuccessful. The Rokudame Hokage glared at his subordinate and commanded, "Stand down, shinobi." However, the shinobi ignored his order and proceeded to slash him. Naruto dodged the horizontal slash and attempted an uppercut on the Anbu, but his fist went straight through the body. The jailer turned in disbelief and saw that the Konoha nin was slowly vanishing while yelling, "Just die, Kyubi brat." With every word laced with venom, the blonde was stunned as she stood there. The blonde muttered, "How is it possible? That nin shouldn't be here. He was never here." He was unable to sense any chakra from the nin during the entire encounter. The blonde suddenly felt pain as he recalled the nin, who as a child was targeted by one of the few shinobi Kakashi halted it 2 weeks prior to his 8th birthday. As his container fell to his knees, the fox muttered, "Just great, things just got worse." He was panting heavily. The fox was aware that everything had changed because the memories had never been so vivid. The only thing he did during these periods was to know what his container was going to do. "Institute, after 8 o'clock," Logan asked, "He's still not back?" As he entered the room where Rogue and Kitty were reading multiple books on the couch. Kitty put down her book and looked at the clock, which read 8:43. "No, and he has never been gone for so long," she replied. Gazing out the doorway, Logan said, "Haven't you tried calling him?" Rogue said as she got to her feet, "Yeah, but the damn idiot won't answer." Logan tried to calm the girls down by saying, "I'll give him another hour. If he's not back by then, I'll go out looking for him." He had to find the boy, so he left them and went to Xavier. As he got closer to the office, he heard Naruto saying to Xavier, "I have to leave," before he hurried to the room. 20 minutes prior to he opened his room's window with a sigh, unable to allow them to see how he appeared. His own clothes were ripped in many places, and he was covered in blood. His only means of escape from his thoughts was training, and his clones had taken a toll on him. He created a clone and silently instructed him to start packing his backpack with all of his belongings, including clothes, weapons, and other items in order to clean up. He quietly left the room and went to the shower. He quickly showered after entering to wash off the dirt from training and changed back into his civilian clothes. His eyes widened a little as he left the restroom and proceeded down the hallway, recalling that his clone had already placed his bag next to his bike. Telling Charles that he had to leave was all that was required of him. It was the last thing he wanted to do for him. What transpired in the afternoon meant that whatever was going on with him had changed and become more powerful. As he moved down the corridor, everything started to change, to become hazy. The blonde shook his head and opened his eyes to see something he wished he had never seen. A 9-year-old boy ran down the hallway. Desperately searching for a way out, the child ran straight past the assassin and down the hallway before he could fully register anything. However, as the blonde continued to stare, a group of 5 men suddenly materialized and started pursuing the child. This was something he had seen prior to his 9th birthday. It was one of the few birthday beatings he had ever experienced. He had to stop it because he knew what would happen. The blonde then yelled, "Stay away from him, you bastards," as she ran down the hallway while lowering a kunai. When the most powerful demon's jailer arrived at the end of the hallway, he caught a glimpse of someone approaching him. He instinctively put the kunai to their throat. After reaching out and holding them against the wall, he had pinned Kurt against the wall, and the blonde snapped out of it with a snarl. Kurt nervously said, Is this about getting into your ramen cabinet?" as the blonde pushed the kunai away and allowed him to fall to the ground. The blonde gasped and looked around for the men, asking, "Where are they?" Kurt raised himself and said, "Who? You mean Kitty and Rogue, right?" The shinobi looked at the teenager and said, "The men, the child, didn't you see them?" As he put a hand on the blonde's shoulder, the blue-haired teen said, "Naruto, nobody came down this hallway, just us two. What's going on with you?" The blonde clarified, "Nothing, I'm sorry about what happened, it's just that a lot has happened." Kurt looked normal as he observed the blonde's appearance, but he could still make out the faint pinkening of the wounds. "Forget about it, just a misunderstanding, but are you sure you're okay?" As he walked down the hallway in an attempt to divert the teenager's attention, the blonde shot back, "Yeah, just fine and sorry again, so I'll see you later." It wasn't a total lie, either. Kurt watched the retreating blonde until he said, "Yeah, I'll see you later." Then the blonde turned the corner and he thought, "What boy?" The office of Xavier. The blonde stood in front of the door, sighing, and realized that what had just transpired had made it even more obvious to him that he was simply too dangerous to be around them. The blonde then knocked on the door and waited for someone to answer. The blonde heard a "Come in," and went into the room to find Xavier reading a book by the fireplace. The professor closed his book and said, "Ah, Naruto, it's good to see you're back." The blonde sat on the couch beside him and apologized. "I apologize for missing out on dinner and the kids' training. I was just sidetracked." "There is nothing to apologize for, Naruto. I'm sure you had your own things to do, though you should probably get something to eat," replied Charles. The blonde said, "I won't need it, I'll get something on the road," as he got up and moved closer to the fire. As he approached the blonde, Xavier said, "I assume you are on leave. Does this have anything to do with the boy you told Kurt about?" The blonde smiled, "So you heard Kurt's thoughts, huh?" Charles answered, "He forgives you," though he was taken back, allaying the blonde's fears. As he watched the fire dance, the blonde said, "Good, Kurt's a good friend, and as for the boy, he has to do with everything." "And that would be?" prodded the professor, trying to help the assassin. The blonde said only, "My past," before continuing, "Every year, Charles, around my birthday I am plagued by my past. Visions of my so-called childhood plague my dreams, my thoughts, my actions. I can never walk away from it. I was burdened with that fate until my precious ones came into my life, but even then they would only dull the pain and suffering." The blonde ended with a sad smile, allowing Xavier to finish what he had said. He and Logan had asked him about his past, so the professor knew what he was talking about. The professor wheeled himself beside the couch and said, "Then maybe I can help you, Naruto. I can help you overcome them." The blonde replied in a melancholy tone as he allowed his chakra to rise, "It won't work, Charles. The only person that was able to help me is gone and she can't come back." Looking at the blonde assassin, Charles said, "Nevertheless, Naruto, I want to help you. We all owe you that much." The blonde looked directly into the man's eyes and nodded when she said, "Very well, Charles. Maybe you can do something for me. Just get out of my head at any moment. You can't handle it, because Charles, the real reason I didn't let you go in my head a year ago was that what's in here can break you." With a sigh, the blonde went to the couch, sat down, and calmed his mind to remove the mental block preventing Xavier from entering. The blonde opened his eyes and gave the professor the all clear. The professor then placed his hands on his head to improve their communication. This only lasted a few seconds before Charles released the blonde's face and inhaled deeply. The man asked, "How is it possible for you to have suffered so much at a young age?" He had reached his 7th birthday and was at his breaking point. "And as for how I handled it, was just moving on and never looking back, though everything wasn't always bad, just hard to take in so young," the blonde said half-heartedly as he stood up and handed the man some water from a nearby pitcher. "You shouldn't have pushed it, Charles. Even Ino could only go up to my 6th birthday before we called it a quits for the day." "And the beatings?" asked Charles, who felt sickened with the villagers who partook in them. "Ah, the beatings. Now those were rare, as you saw. The entire time till I turned 6 I had only received one, but as I grew some of the more idiotic villagers became bold and tried harder. Many of those attacks for my blood failed, yet some slipped by and got close enough to knock me out from the pain till Anbu showed up. Yet for some stupid reason I can't bring myself to loathe them." The blonde laughed. Charles felt helpless for not being able to assist the blonde who had endured so much, so he added, "I'm sorry, Naruto, for everything that you had to go through and for not being a bigger help to you." The blonde waved off the apology and said, "Forget about it, Charles. What's happening to me is something I have to deal with alone." Xavier frowned and said, "So I take it you're leaving tonight?" The blonde wanted to help him even though he thought he had to handle this alone because he was certain that everyone else would agree. "Yeah, I have to leave," the blonde started, but was cut off when the door opened and Logan emerged. The blonde exclaimed, "Hey there, old man." Logan questioned, disregarding the nickname, "You're going where, Blondie?" With a sheepish, Just taking one from your book and heading out for a bit. Admission, the shinobi. Sigh. Truth of it, I was wondering when you were going to do something about it. All this past week you've been off your game, admitted Logan with a smile as he remembered kicking the blonde's ass. When the blonde exclaimed, "Hey, those spars don't count," Xavier grinned at the sight of the vibrant blonde once more. Logan grinned and said, "Well, yeah right you idiot," before adding, "But you should probably go downstairs before the girls start a citywide search party." The blonde turned and felt a hand on his shoulder. "Yeah, I probably should, so I'll see you both when I do," he replied. He turned to see it was Logan. Logan looked into the blonde's eyes and said, "You should stay the night, brat, instead of leaving tonight. It would only be harmful to his health in the state the blonde was in due to fatigue." "I'll probably see you both tomorrow and thanks for trying, Charles," the blonde replied with a shake of his head, before continuing as he left, "But knowing the girls, they won't let me leave tonight after I tell them." Xavier smiled and said, "That young man is like no other. To live the life he has been through and still be able to smile is incredible. That he is Chuck, he's one of those that takes the hand they're dealt and makes something out of it." Logan nodded. The staircase. As he approached the staircase leading to the mansion's entrance, the blonde let out a sigh. Using all the shinobi skills he had developed over the years, he sneaked a peek at his two loved ones, who seemed to be waiting for him to return. They appeared impatient as they occasionally stopped reading and glared out the door, and it was observed that they were already in their pajamas. Since the three of them had become close in a short period of time, he knew this would be challenging the shinobi side again. Deciding that he had made them wait long enough and that he should make his presence known, he then positioned himself in the middle of the staircase and descended, allowing his footsteps to be heard, but he smiled when he noticed they were ignoring him. The blonde moved behind them, leaned his head between them, and said, "You have to assume it's Logan or one of the others." The girl's glaring argument with the door was interrupted by the question, "Who are we waiting for?" As she calmed down, Rogue yelled, "Damn it Naruto, don't do that." Kitty gave him a gentle shoulder slap and said, "Yeah Naruto." With a laugh, the ninja threw himself over the couch and landed between them, smiling and putting his arms around their shoulders. The blonde smiled and said, "I'm sorry, it was just too easy to ignore. In addition, you two ought to have noticed me when I made myself known." Rogue crossed her arms over her chest and retorted, "Yeah, well we were kinda busy waiting for someone to get home." The blonde, playing dumb, replied, "Really, who? And if it's a dude, he is so dead." Kitty leaned into his embrace and shot back, "Idiot, and you know we have an entrance for a reason." The blonde sheepishly replied, "I told you shinobi rarely use the door, but trust me, you would have not liked how I looked." Rogue stared him in the eyes and said, "Damn it Naruto, what did you do this time?" As his stomach rumbled, causing the girls to perspire, Naruto said, "He mind if we continue this in the diner? I kind missed dinner." As she and Rogue got up and led the blonde to the diner, Kitty yelled, "Come on, Rogue, let's go feed this big baby." The dining room. The blonde sighed to get their attention after he had finished his meal of spaghetti and chicken and had been informed of what he had missed that day. Kitty drank her soda and said, "So you finally going to tell us why you came home so late?" In an attempt to sidestep answering the question directly, the blonde said, "Let's just say that I was blowing off some steam." Rogue narrowed her eyes and shot back, "Naruto, why don't you be more specific?" As he pouted, the blonde muttered, "I was out training and overdid it again." He thought, "Yeah, way to go. Namikaze, you can keep secret battle plans away from enemies, but you can't handle to teenage girls." However, their tormentors were not as attractive. Kitty grinned at him and asked, "How bad, and did you destroy a teacher's car again?" She couldn't really hold it against him if he did. Yes, the blonde did not take threats well. Like he totally destroyed Mrs. Hawkins' car after she threatened to fail him. The blonde rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and replied, "Enough that I had to burn my trashed cloths." Rogue sighed and said, "Naruto, not again, that's your fifth pair this week." "Yeah, well, it hasn't been easy," the blonde muttered gravely, surprising them with his tone shift. Kitty touched his arm and said, "Are you finally going to tell us what's been bothering you?" As he gazed off into space, the blonde muttered, "Things have changed." The teen's second love said, "Naruto, what on earth are you talking about?" He turned to them and said, "You both know about my past, at least some of the parts one let you." Kitty raised an eyebrow and said, "Yeah, I still don't know why you won't tell us more though." The only things he had really disclosed to him were about some of his friends and missions. With a half smile, the blonde corrected, "Because my past is not one that a person wants to explore, that is no sane person." Rogue smiled and said, "You're avoiding the subject, Naruto." As he inhaled, the blonde thought, "I guess there's no avoiding it for much longer." He wasn't sure if he could handle being apart from them for so long because what he was about to do was going to hurt. Before continuing, the former Konoha leader said, "What happened in my past, my childhood, has affected me in so many ways throughout my life. I have to leave for a while, to protect the both of you." In unison, the girls exclaimed, "What are you talking about? You better have a good explanation, Namikaze." The blonde recoiled from the volume. As he sensed some of the younger students approaching them, he asked the blonde, "Let's not talk about this here, okay?" Probably thinking that they get to see me whipped, the blonde said dryly. "Oh no, you're going to tell us what's going on in your insane mind." Seeing no other option, the shinobi sprang into action and swiftly grabbed both of their hands before they rose in a puff of smoke. Kitty was still furious at the blonde's statement and Rogue nodded her head in agreement with narrowed eyes. Tree line close to the institute. Naruto defeated us. Rogue became enraged with the shinobi as she and her sister figure were released. He knew they would do this, so the blonde calmly said, "Calm down and let me explain." As she and Rogue finally started to calm down, Kitty said, "Fine, Naruto, explain, but this better reasonable." She was so angry when he said he was leaving that she felt as though her world was about to fall apart, and she wasn't sure why. Is Rogue feeling this way too? She asked herself, unaware that the same thing was going through the girls' minds. The blonde who was attracting the attention of the two girls said, "Like I said, my childhood affected me so much that I'm beginning to lose control again." He went on to say, "Because of that, I'm constantly haunted by my past around this time of year. It influences what I think and do." He sat down at the base of a tree and finished the blonde. "It's just not safe to be around me." After allowing the new information to sink in, Rogue said, "You have to be kidding, Naruto. Please tell me you're just messing around." However, when she looked into his eyes, she realized he was telling the truth. As she knelt beside him, Kitty continued, "Naruto, you don't have to leave, you know we're not that weak. You two don't fully understand this. I pose a threat to you both and everyone in my vicinity," the blonde added. In an attempt to stop the blonde's escape, Rogue retorted, "Then let the professor help you, I'm sure that he can help you." The shinobi replied, "Already tried even though I knew he wouldn't be able." "Then stay put. We'll support you during this." Naruto. Kitty put a hand on his cheek and pleaded, "We promised that we would be there for you, just give us a chance to help you. I can't allow you to do that, even though I know you two would." It was painful to leave them, but he would if it meant protecting them. What transpired in the afternoon and with Kurt demonstrated to the jailer that whatever was wrong had become more powerful. "I need to face this on my own. Last time I relied on Ino far too much to get me through this, and now look at what's happened," he said, looking them in the eyes. "So, what time are you departing?" Rogue, tired of the blonde's response, said, "If he was going to be leaving soon, I want to spend as much time with him as possible." As he observed their startled responses, the blonde replied, "Tonight if possible." As Kitty thought, "This is all happening way too fast," she argued, "Wait, you can't leave tonight, Naruto, it's too soon." The blonde retorted, "It's best for me to leave soon before I hurt someone." He truly didn't want to leave, so Rogue asked him, "Just one more day please," looking him in the eyes and noticing that he was struggling just as much as they were. As he clutched them in the moonlight, the blonde said, "Fine, a single day and I'll leave." In Naruto's room at midnight, the only light in the room was the moonlight, and the blonde was up at such a late hour, leaning against the headrest of his bed, holding the only two people he could fall in love with, his lifelines. It was odd that he could fall in love with them so quickly, but he couldn't help it. Something just drew him to them, and he was glad that nothing bad happened to them. As he stroked Kitty's cheek and watched her move closer to his touch, the assassin thought, "Even if that person is me." He smiled and moved away from Rogue's face as he watched her sleep. Despite his fatigue, he had gone on longer missions without sleep because he didn't want to appear weak in front of his new family, and he had to be the pillar of strength for others for so long that they knew he would always be. The blonde mocked himself by saying, "This is sad, Namikaze, to be afraid to close your eyes in fear of seeing someone after your blood." He then spoke aloud, but only in a whisper so as not to wake his two angels. "But since I am a Namikaze and an Uzumaki, I will overcome this." Before he waited for daylight to break, the blonde gave each of the girls a head kiss, "And if not for myself, then for you too." Unknown place, Naruto's point of view. "The girls told me to come back soon. That was almost 2 weeks ago. My birthday has come and I am now 19 years old, but the nightmares and dreams that haunt me still exist. The pain of being apart from them burns in my chest as I watch the sunset and the night begin to rise. Counting the days I am apart from them, the horrors of my past still haunt me, but they haven't gotten any weaker as the fox thought, and more often than not, I think the damn things are actually getting stronger. I've lost track of time in this dangerous time in my life so far." This is in the top 10. I really can't remember that well. I think it was the day before my birthday. I haven't gotten that much sleep. Maybe a few hours. I haven't kept track of how many times the nightmares have woken me up. How long has it been since I had a good night's sleep? When have I not dreamed of the hateful glares? Someone attempting to slit my throat? I sit here in the moonlight, at the base of a tree, waiting for sunrise, but I can't get rid of the feeling that I'm being watched. I don't question my instincts, though. The last time I did that, Anbu nearly killed me. I'm not sure why, but I'm not afraid. I want to move on from my past, I suppose, but I can't because I won't let myself. For some stupid reason this won't control my life because, for some reason, I still can't understand. Kitty and Rogue have feelings for me, and I'm not sure why they would want to be near me. I haven't heard either of their voices in a long time, not since my birthday. Even though it seems like it's time for me to move again, I think I'm getting close to the Canadian border again, and I keep going toward the States no matter how much I try to get away from them. I'm not sure what to do anymore. I keep going forward and keep searching for a ghost. They keep trying to get me to tell them where I am, trying to find my location so they can come, but I won't, not now that I have no idea what to do. The only way I'll allow them to be near me is if I have total control over myself. I'm searching for any signs of Madara, even though I'm positive he's dead. I sent some sage clones around the United States a few days ago, but I haven't seen any, so now I'm in Canada looking for him myself, but I doubt I'll find anything because I don't feel like myself. Which is strange because I feel fine at times, but also like I'm so out of it now that the sun has finally graced me. It seems like it's time for me to move out again. Let's see where life takes me today, hopefully to my sanity. Kitty's point of view. Her room with Rogue. 2 weeks have passed since I last saw that stupid blonde I care about, and I miss him so much that sometimes I wonder if it's normal for me to think about him so much. I wonder if Rogue feels the same way. It's funny because before Naruto entered my life, I never imagined that I would get along with Rogue so well. Sometimes we can be so different, but when he's around, we get along so well. He claims it's his charm, but I say it's because he constantly gets himself into trouble, which makes us both yell at him. Even so, I can't stay angry with him for very long because he has a way of confusing me. I still can't believe it's been 2 weeks since we last spoke, and everything seems so dead to me. He used to play harmless practical jokes on the recruits when he was here, but he would say it was out of care. Even Logan seems to be pouting a little, but I'm not sure if that's just him being himself. Rewind to normal PO versus as they made their way through the park. The blonde shinobi and the girl who had caught his eye were attempting to spend time with each of the girls before he had to depart on his self-imposed exile. The blonde had his right arm around the girl's waist and was guiding them in an arbitrary direction, but neither of them seemed to mind, as they were both grinning. The brunette exclaimed, "Wow, this day has been great so far," as her eyes glistened with delight. The girl blushed a little as he drew her closer to himself and said, "I hope it has." And it hasn't. As they started to approach the playground where a number of kids were playing, the girl asked with a naive expression. As he led them to a tree a little distance from the kids, the jailer grinned and said, "I'll grant anything you want." "Anything?" prodded the girl, and the blonde nodded. The girl looked him in the eyes and replied, "Don't leave." With a sigh, the blonde dropped to the tree's base and drew Kitty onto his lap. The blonde leaned against the trunk and gazed up at the sky before responding. "Anything but that," was the shinobi's sad smile in response. He knew she would pull a move like this and was duped. The girl, who had refused to back down since meeting the blonde, shot back, "No fair. You said anything, so pay up." The shinobi added, his tone lighthearted, "Let me reiterate that anything that won't put you in danger." Shocked, the blonde retorted, "Please Naruto, give it up. I know you wouldn't hurt me." Before he responded, his mind was racing with the question, how can she have so much trust in me? To sound so full of confidence towards me? I would much rather jam a Rasengan into my own body. You know. The blonde put his head on her shoulder and replied, "But I won't take that risk, Kitty, not with you or anyone else. Why do you want to leave if you won't harm me? Isn't that worse for me, in your opinion?" The girl's voice was so full of emotion that it sent shivers up the blonde's spine as she asked. As the girl leaned into his chest, the blonde replied, "Because out of both choices I'll choose the one that keeps you alive." He knew she was upset, but he wouldn't be swayed by her choice. He would do whatever it took to keep her safe. Observing that he refused to change his mind, the girl said again in a playful manner, "Then, Naruto, go to sleep. You start to resemble the living dead." "Wow, Kitty, that really nice to say," was the blonde's response, happy that she had chosen to change the topic. "You understand me?" As she attempted to reason with him and get to her feet before being pulled back down, the girl added, "Come on, let's get you home so you can rest." "No, I think I'd prefer to remain here." The blonde smiled at her and replied, "Besides, if I do fall asleep, I won't see you, and that's something I need to do right now." With a smile of her own, The girl shot back, "You're so thick-headed sometimes, Naruto," as they started talking about irreverent topics and she wasn't really concerned about anything else at the time. End of flashback. Kitty's point of view. Even though his skin tone was getting paler and he had dark rings under his eyes, and his golden hair had started to lose some of its shine, nobody who didn't know him personally could see the changes, except for us here in the mansion, where everyone at least considers where he is. Heck, some of the new recruits joke that he's probably out there wrestling with only God knows what, and to be honest, I kind of believe it too. That's the moment I keep remembering. One of the last time I truly spoke with him. It feels so long since I've seen him. Kurt called out from outside my door, "Hey Kitty, come on, Logan wants us outside for training." As I get up to endure Logan's torture, I call back, "I'll be there in a sec." Well, I suppose I can only hope that the blonde fool will return home soon. Road in Canada. Naruto's point of view. I've already spent the majority of my morning walking around looking for the head of the criminal organization that had been pursuing me for the better part of my life, but I have found nothing. I detest this sense of helplessness. I feel like a genin just out of the academy heading to battle. I'm racing down the road on my bike, trying to escape everything and nothing at the same time. Does Kyuubi have anything? As I crossed the 70 marker, I muttered. My only mental response to the demon was, "Sorry, kid, I still don't know what the hell is going on with you." So what should I do? The blasted fox didn't know what was wrong with me, so I asked urgently as I sped up once more, should I just keep moving or run away? I knew what was going through his mind. Every single Biju had vowed to protect their containers in their own way, and Kyuubi's was through his advanced healing that surpassed the others. "I don't know kid, I just don't know," was the fox's response in my mind, and I could tell he felt defeated throughout my life. He had been able to heal any of my wounds perfectly, but to him, this was impossible. I heard him growling in frustration, so I tried to calm him down by saying, "It's all right, Fox. I know you've done everything you can." It seemed like I had to put up with this nonsense for longer than I had anticipated, so I sighed as I made a sharp turn. Perhaps I should pay more attention to the road. Nah, too troublesome. A deranged voice hissed, "Just die." It sounded as though the person was standing right next to me, but there was no one there. "Demon brat," was called out, but the tone of the voice was different but still antagonistic. "Worthless trash, just crawl under a rock and die," was a feminine voice that screamed in my ear. "Give me the hell away." The shit was starting to hit the fan now, though I was starting to wonder when this would happen. I growled out as I sped up, trying to get away from the voices, but I knew it was hopeless. I had never heard these voices so strong, so it appears I was correct about them getting stronger. The words, "Murderer, you killed everyone that night," were yelled. Through my helmet, I muttered, "It wasn't me. You have no remorse. You would probably finish us off if you could. I kept you all safe." With a sharp edge in my voice, I shot back, "A liar. All you are is a demon, just waiting for the right opportunity to attack." The worst beating I've ever received, which left me in a coma for 2 weeks and left me still messed up even after I woke up, was the day a mob finally cornered me on my 9th birthday. Damn bastards tried hard that year, believing that I would regain my demon powers. This was all coming back to me. It was nearly the same conversation I had on that day. My last words from the voices were, "You won't be missed, trash," before I heard the fox's voice once more. The spirit said, "Kid, are you okay? I've noticed that whenever this occurs, my connection to the fox is broken." That memory still weighed heavily on me as I pulled off the road and entered the wilderness, mumbling, "Yeah, just give me a minute." Sensing my feelings, Kyuubi reassured me, "Naruto, it wasn't your fault." It was true that I felt bad about what had happened, but I suppose I am a fool and a fool. Only I would feel sorry for the fools. "Tay, I know it isn't Kyuubi," I replied in a dreary, lifeless voice. "What is the reason for the foolish regret then?" was requested of me. I stopped by a tree in a field and said, "I can see where the fools were coming from. They had no way to release their anger and pain of losing their loved ones except for me, their object of revenge. In addition to distracting me in case the voices reappear, I suppose I should at least start some training. God, I must be insane." I got off my bike and headed toward the middle of the field, away from the shade before 100 clones appeared. I slowly raised my hand into a single seal. I finally saw how I looked for the first time in days. Well, I suppose it could be worse. My eyes were bloodshot, my hair was getting a little paler, and my clothes were a little sloppy. I was also defiantly pale now, with dark bruise-like marks beneath my eyes from lack of sleep. I commanded the clones to just do anything that you think we need to work on. Each clone gradually dispersed, with multiple clones dispersing to practice chakra control. I needed that anyhow, so that's good. I guess I've been ignoring my training for a long time. Not to be outdone, I started to slowly gather chakra in my hand, giving it shape and increasing its speed of rotation. Within 10 seconds, I was holding a Rasengan. Since that brief altercation with Logan, I hadn't formed one in a long time. It's really unfortunate because one of my signature jutsu is the Rasengan, so it feels good to hold one after not forming one for so long. It gives me the impression that I haven't fallen into this terrible state where I am unable to recall significant aspects of my life. In addition, the ability to form the Rasengan indicates that I still have control over my chakra. If not, this is the ideal method to restore it, since one of the best methods for manipulating chakras is the Rasengan. I stopped using the technique and looked up at the sky, wondering what had truly happened to me. This new life of mine was finally starting to satisfy me when it was torn from me. In a sense, I guess by myself to be insane and live in constant fear of hurting other people. God, I'm so pitiful. Garage, Institute Rouge's point of view. I haven't seen that fool in far too long, and I think I'm starting to miss his antics. Without him, it's been much too quiet, and the atmosphere seems much too subdued. However, it appears that only Kitty and I are aware of it. I question whether I'm even sane for missing him this much. Even though we haven't been dating for very long, I still feel like he knows me well. However, the fact that Kitty and I get along is another strange thing to me. I mean, before Naruto came along, I never thought that Kitty and I would get along. Come on, she's Kitty. I leaned back in his Mustang's driver's seat and muttered, "Damn it, come home already." I asked the idiot to stay, but why couldn't he? We're not that weak, after all. Even though he insisted that wasn't the reason for his departure and that we would simply be destroyed if we attempted to stop him while he was possessed. In all honesty, I still remember how he beat us all that time, and I do believe him. However, that does not imply that he is correct. I tried even though I knew he wouldn't change his mind. POV flashback normal. The road leading up to Lookout Point was twisted by the blonde's Mustang as he intertwined their fingers. The blonde was seen smiling at the girl beside him from inside. Rouge looked back at the blonde and said, "Shouldn't you be paying attention to the road?" The blonde laughed and continued to look at her while driving, asking, "I suppose I should, huh?" The girl laughed and shot back, "Yeah, pretty much, though I still don't get how you managed to keep us in one piece." As he parked the car, the blonde said, "I don't see why I should, we're here already." But for all intents and purposes, he was able to drive that way because of his toad training. Despite this, the blonde got out, climbed up on the car's hood, and dragged the smaller girl along. After a while, the blonde remarked, "This is nice," as he noticed that the sky was turning orange due to the sun almost setting. Rouge snuggled closer to the shinobi's side and said, "Yeah, hey Naruto, can I ask you a question?" was added. As he focused entirely on her, the blonde replied, "Yeah, you know you don't have to ask permission." She put her ungloved hand on his cheek and asked, "Do you think I'm close to controlling my powers?" The blonde responded without hesitation, "You're getting there for sure. After you master the next step in chakra manipulation, you should have far greater control though." As she started to set up her trap, hoping he would fall for it, the girl asked, "So when are you going to teach it to me?" In response, the blonde looked back up at the sky and said, "Logan will teach it to you all when he feels you guys are ready, since you know I won't be able to." As she gazed into his face, the girl replied in a knowing tone, "You know you could if you would stay." The blonde calmly replied, "But you know I won't, not this time." In reality, he had been waiting for her to do this to him to completely change him and make him question why he left, but he would not change his mind. The girl looked at him and turned her face slightly away before shooting back, "You know you're an idiot if you think we can't take care of you." He put his hand on her cheek and calmly replied, "And you know I won't let that situation become a reality." He made her look him in the eyes and said, "You or anyone else for that matter will not be cursed with my burden, not if I can help it." The girl's voice was so kind that the shinobi could only think of one thing. "You know you don't have to go through this alone, just let me help you." Why? Why is she so invested in me? The blonde regained his concentration and responded to the nervous girl after a human weapon shook him out of his thoughts. "You are helping me just by believing in me, Rouge, by making me feel sane." The girl asked with a somewhat dejected expression, "So there's no way that you will stay?" The jailer started to tickle her, which made her laugh, "Not for now, babe, but just know that I won't be gone for long. Before you know it, I'll be back and causing all sorts of chaos," he added. The blonde eventually paused, leaned back on the hood, and dragged her down with him. The girl at the blonde's side said, "Hey Naruto." The blonde raised an eyebrow and asked, "Yeah?" Rouge said with a hint of humor, "You know you should really get some sleep. I mean, come on, you're looking like the Walking Dead." The blonde smiled and drew her in closer, saying, "Tay, you're not the only one to say that to me." End of flashback. Rouge's point of view. One of the last genuine discussions I had with Naruto was that one. There are moments when I wonder what the idiot is up to. He's out there wrestling with wild animals, the recruit's wager in actuality, that would be very similar to him. However, the wagers range from bears to mountain lions. I would wager that he would engage in bear combat because of some Iwa ninja who used bears to almost rip him to pieces. The damn blonde has a thing for bears. I still worry about him, though. Hey Rouge! Kurt called out from my side, and I jumped in the seat. Damn him for teleporting. I screamed at him, "Don't do that," and he looked sheepish. "Sorry about that, but Logan says that it's time for training," replied he. He nodded and departed in a puff of smoke, to which I replied, "Okay, I suppose we'd better get it over with already. I might as well finish this now. I only hope Logan doesn't start using the kunai once more. Why must you show him, Naruto? Damn you, all I can hope for is that the fool returns quickly no matter where he is." Canadian Forest. Naruto's point of view. I'm lying here by the fire I made an hour ago, marking the end of another day. In a heap were the burnt remains of the rabbits I had captured and consumed. I couldn't continue for very long because my clones have long since scattered. It appears that I overestimated myself once more because I nearly succumbed to chakra exhaustion without getting any real sleep. I have hardly ever experienced that, and when I have always faced a difficult struggle. However, I question whether it would really be that bad to become so exhausted that I would pass out if I'm accepting that circumstance. I'm starting to go completely crazy. God, how much longer? I murmured as I looked up at the sky, which was getting darker and the stars were already beginning to emerge. Why does a fine thread of genuine happiness lace my life with a curse of pain? To be the one who sacrifices so much and receives so little in return. I'm not sure how I truly feel about my past. The more I consider it, the less sympathy I feel. I think my animosity toward the villagers is really starting to grow. Many things were taken away from me by the older generations. "Why don't you simply pass away?" was abruptly shouted at me from all sides of the woods. I mumble, "Nice of you to drop on by," as a strained smile appears on my face. "Demon," was all I could say. However, I question whether I should actually be attempting to annoy them. Whatever I've done for the majority of my life, that is, why halt now? It's strange that this seemingly insignificant item to a shinobi would be of such great assistance to me, so I answered my own question as I unsealed my guitar. These memories are finally coming back to me. Ironically, some of the songs I've written in the past each tell a story about a time in my life. I suppose this is one of the ways I really deal with this crap, so why not use it to try to numb the pain? God knows I could use it now. Slowly, I start playing notes that seem so unfamiliar but at the same time, so naturally, "Unloved," was hissed out at me. I could practically feel the icy breath at my throat. These words just keep coming to me naturally. The memories are getting much clearer. The phantoms of my past are really coming back to haunt me, and the pain hasn't gone away yet. The ghosts are assembling all around me, whispering in my ear in icy tones, and I can see every memory as though it were happening again. They are all demanding that I be put to death by their hand. It's strange that these stares can have such an impact on me. I'm a seasoned shinobi, and they make me feel the same way I did when I was 9 years old. Every hateful glare is in front of me, echoing with every ounce of hate that has ever been directed at me. That birthday altered my childhood because I was exposed to physical pain. They did this for the straightforward reason that I was displaying too much potential in the academy and that they believed I would attack them soon. Although I wish I had, I chose to put my own happiness ahead of theirs, allowing an idiot to replace my skill and true self and giving them the impression that I posed no threat to their way of life. I was beaten to within an inch of my life that day in the most heinous and inventive ways they could think of, each of them causing me enough pain to knock me out, only to be resurrected by the sheer agony. My knees were broken by a bat, and my right arm was twisted in a strange angle that made it look like it had been mutilated by a wild animal. My left arm was burned until it was just crisped flesh, and my chest was lined with slashes from the various knives and weapons they had on me. My skull was fractured from being thrown against the alley wall when they caught me, and I regrettably looked like a seasoned shinobi who had survived a vicious battle during the Third Great War. I'm not sure if I can still feel, but these phantoms and demons are getting to me, and even though I can't feel them anymore, they are causing me to feel a great deal of pain and anguish. That's just one of the demons of my past, and I can tell the others are just waiting for their turn at me. I'm not sure if that makes sense, though. Is the purpose of this to make me lose all feeling? To make me lose myself in the darkness I've lived in for so long? I mumble, I am tired of this, setting the guitar aside as the demons flee to the depths of my childhood madness. Fatigue is finally starting to get to me, and as I slowly close my eyes, I feel everything around me darken and change, and I gradually find myself sinking into the darkness. The only things I can see in this oppressive darkness are the faces of trees, and my lights in the emptiness are the only things that keep me alive. For once, I won't be escaping this curse. It's time for me to fight. Naruto POV. This sense of weakness is something I detest greatly. I vowed to never be useless, so this shouldn't be the case. However, I am still cursed by my own actions as I stand in the middle of this lake. These phantoms continued to haunt me when I finally woke up from my sleep a few days ago. Those 2 days of unconsciousness were definitely not what I had hoped for. As I start to quickly form hand signs for the Kaden Gokaku Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique, I mutter, God must really hate me. Apart from the fact that I needed to do something to divert my attention, I was getting really annoyed with all of this nonsense. The fox inside of me said, "No kid, Kami doesn't hate you, she's just bored and needs a drama show." Shut up, Kyuubi. I respond as I shoot the fireball skyward and start feeding it chakra, which makes it enlarge and get hotter. This is unquestionably a relief from the ongoing suffering that I endure along with me, hopefully, finally beginning to put myself back together. Yeah, no shit, kid, I was starting to get annoyed with all the sulking. Hell, you had me doing it. The fox spirit replied, it's safe to say that Kyuubi was relieved of my will and that he was sufficiently recovered for us to begin acting a little more jovial. Even though it's easier said than done, especially since I began to treat these phantoms more like a joke than anything else. However, that doesn't mean the curse hasn't returned by hurting me. In fact, I believe I enraged them when I played the song the last time. Since this plane of existence occasionally overlaps with my tainted past, they have really stepped it up a notch. Not that I haven't seen my fair share when I've searched my mind, but that in and of itself is really unsettling to say the least. Focus, kid. Called out the inner fox I harbored. He kept juggling, trying to keep me sane while looking for any clues. I suppose the fox is a boon at times. I got it, is my reply as I finish the jutsu and display a few kunai in preparation for the next move. I maintain my attention on the water's surface as I wait for the right opportunity. When I see what I want, I lash out the kunai with enough force to pierce the fish that jump out of the water, and I know they will reach the shore. Before releasing themselves, I smile and nod to the 3 clones that shatter the water's surface and return it themselves. This brings back a lot of memories of my time spent with Squad 7 in the Forest of Death as a genin when Sasuke and I were hunting for food. We devised the same tactic. However, I am unable to savor those memories because I am starting to experience an icy aura that surrounds my own body. As I prepare myself for whatever is thrown at me, I yell, "You know, I am beginning to wonder if you will ever give up, cuz I won't break." My vision starts to distort as my senses expand and look for anything unusual, and I am struck with a great deal of murderous intent. Before everything is settled, the source of my anxiety is more concerning than the intention to kill. I yell at the people in front of me, "Why? You're all supposed to be dead. Why'd I have to deal with you again?" Whatever was causing this was really beginning to irritate me. If that was its intention, I had nightmares about these 3 because of what they had done to me when I was 10, because there were 3 individuals in front of me who held a special place in my heart. A place that had nearly driven me insane. 3 shinobi who felt compelled to kill me were standing in front of me. As I tried to control my emotions and keep myself together, I yell, "You know, I never thought I would see you all again, even though I remember each of you so clearly." As a child, these 3 Anbu used to haunt me every year, making me afraid to close my eyes given the quantity of confirmed kills they had. They were among the greatest shinobi of their era, and for good reason. They had filled my heart with more than enough fear, and they had frightened many of Konoha's enemies. I had never felt more terrified than I did when these 3, Falcon, Shark, and Bull, attacked. As he started to move to the right, the Anbu wearing the shark mask snarled, "You took everything from us." I should not be surprised, though, because it seems to me that he is not even speaking to me. As I look at him, my past battles with my demons were always at the center of whatever was going on with me. Conversations I must endure once more. "I never did anything against you 3. I yell in a firm tone, but I can feel my voice faltering. "Remain calm, Namikaze." The Anbu wearing the bull mask hissed, "You took our family and fled to the left. It's true that when Kyuubi attacked, they lost their entire family, but I shouldn't be held accountable, goddammit." I growl as I briefly lose control of my rage. "I never did. I helped in protecting the village. Why wouldn't you and your brothers ever listen? You would have all survived. That I say their deaths were a waste of life and had no purpose. They were among the few people I could genuinely feel sorry for, but I wasn't to blame for their stupid choices." The lone surviving Anbu in front of me walked with his blade already unsheathed. "You took our brother." Infuriating, they had previously cornered me in this manner, and I growled as I briefly shivered uncontrollably. I narrow my eyes in rage and respond, "He made his choice, and Kakashi made sure he paid for it." The same jerk who had attacked me at the start of this whole situation, their brother, had attempted to kill me on my 8th birthday. And now that I think about it, I suppose it's not shocking that they eventually came for me. Unfortunately, I was unaware of that when I was younger. Every night after they took me, I would wake up in terror. However, It quickly passed after Kakashi reassured me that they would be taken care of, and I realized that being afraid was pointless nevertheless. As a child, I still didn't require that. They roared, "So now you fall, Kyuubi," as they attacked me from all three sides, and I was immobile when I saw their blades poised to impale me. My body froze. I knew my answer, and it was unmistakably no. Is this how I wanted it to end? I had to stay alive because I still had too much to lose. I lifted my head to look them in the face and saw nothing but hatred behind their masks. So I reassured myself some things never change, like the way they used to look at me. I scream as I make myself move once more and start to gather chakra around my body. But know this, just how time goes on so have I, and I am not that little brat you nearly killed. Before long, my chakra is all around me, blazing like fire. Many deaths could have been prevented and a great deal of suffering could have been avoided if I had this ability as a child. As I assume my fighting stance and wait for their attacks, I tell myself, but now is not the time for these thoughts. Even if these demons aren't real, their strength and power will probably be just as great as their desire to kill me. So I'm not even sure if I could defeat them. Furthermore, I'm not sure how long I can continue this given how weak I am right now. I mumble, but I won't let it end, as I allow my power to surge in waves, causing waves of chakra to travel throughout my body. And, to put it briefly, halting the three Anbu, I frown and add, "I guess you really should learn to hold yourselves together." I pump more chakra and am happy with the outcome as I release another chakra pulse. Unleashing my chakra has never hurt so much, but I suppress a cry of pain as I feel the strain on my body. I endure this unrelenting burn, which is like being burned by Amaterasu. As if the sands of time were being blown away by the wind, the three Anbu soon start to gradually disappear once more into the depths of my thoughts. I open my eyes again and see that I am alone. Oddly, I never even realized I had my eyes closed. However, I quickly detect a warm, metallic taste that I am all too familiar with. I rub some of the liquid dripping from my mouth with my hand up to my mouth and discover it's blood, my own. I drop to one knee on the rippling surface of the water and murmur, "Why? It was never intended for me to experience the pain I did when I used my chakra." However, as I stumble over and watch the blood being further released, my thoughts are cut off. I hear the fox yelling from inside his cage, "Naruto," as our connection is restored. As it always is following such assaults and as all of the playfulness from earlier disappears, I hear his concern. As I get back up, I reply, "I think I'm alright. I detest this sensation of vulnerability." I have to focus slowly on walking back to the land. I was surprisingly fortunate to be able to focus and remain on the water's surface. Despite my pain, I'm curious about the other people's experiences with the water walking technique. Suddenly, I think of the girls from the institute again. God, I miss them. It feels like an internal torment to even consider being apart from them. I haven't experienced this since Ino spent a lot of time apart from me. When I get to the shore, the fox says, "Kid, you sure you okay?" and immediately starts to pump his chakra for its healing powers. Damn, it really did care for being a supposedly evil spirit. As I pick up the forgotten fish, I respond, "Yak you." The pain is almost gone and I'm beginning to feel control over my chakra. It was strange that the pain vanished in an instant. Even though not even Kyuubi's chakra could heal that quickly, all I had left of the only person who had ever been able to do that in my life were memories. However, I was equally surprised by Kitty's and Rogue's thoughts. I cared too much about them, though, not because I don't feel anything for them but due to the brief period of time in which it took place. As I started to piece things together, I thought aloud, could it be that? But shook my head at the idea that it might actually be true. I ignited the dry wood I had already gathered and placed the fish on the sticks they had been impaled in, forcing myself to stop thinking about that. As I sit by the fire and enjoy its warmth, I tell myself, they still deserve better than me. I then slowly reach out to feed it my wind chakra, which causes it to warm up a little but also granting me total authority over it. I slowly manipulate the flames with tiny hand movements to make them dance as I please. I quickly recall that the last time I had done this, I had done so while on a mission to aid the waterfall village, which I had taken with her. I mumble, "Angel, you definitely deserved better than me." I felt Kyuubi claw the bars of his cage and growl, "Brat, keep it up, and I'll make your so-called demons seem like kittens." I respond with a smile as I sense his annoyance. "You're displaying an awfully large amount of care, Q. As I recall, that's a human quality, something you had said, and if I remember correctly, useless." The demonic spirit was repelled with the words, "Keep it up and I'll show you care," but I could tell that the threat was essentially meaningless. The fox would always reject them as necessary for his survival. Even if he occasionally displayed signs of concern, he still maintained his pride despite the fact that he had already come to terms with the fact that he and I were essentially stuck together. "Of course, almighty king of none," is my response, and I hear him mumble, "Virgin." After hearing him growl and smile, I felt a little uncomfortable, but I ignored it because I deserved it and I didn't want to have to deal with this argument again. "So learn anything new this time after the attack?" I inquire. As I grabbed the finished fish and started to eat, the fox replied, "Only that this attack lasted longer than the others, not to mention that they are defiantly pissed if they can use killing intent. Oh, and you control over your chakra is crap whenever they occur," I said. "Fuck you, Q," is my response as I eat the fish and consider it. Even though it was an unusual indication of a lack of control, it is essentially true that the pain I experienced was evidence of that, since I had maintained control of my chakra until the attack began. I was genuinely perplexed by this and asked, "Any reason why?" "Nope," was the shrewd response I got from the damn fox, "but I guess I better go and check things out. You coming?" The fox was most likely trying to figure out what aspects of my mind were responsible for this. As I get up off the ground and apply a little water jutsu to the fire, I respond, "No, I'll join you later. I want to move the location to somewhere else, in case I get bored." I gather my belongings and head to the trees after realizing it's out. The only response I received was, "Fine," as the fox disconnected to begin one of the searches. Perhaps we'll discover something valuable every time we have tried in the past, we have failed. That is, if you think about going through some of the more traumatic memories, then no. Even though it hurts, I suppose it's necessary because some of the more valuable things require sacrifice, so I suppose it's worth it. However, I don't think the girls would like witnessing this step of the procedure. If it wasn't done by their hand, they couldn't bear to see me in pain. I guess they do have a bit of Ino in them. Certainly as thick-headed as she is, however, they also possess something extra that sets them apart from everyone else. Kitty has that aura of pure joy and care that makes me want to be close to her just to be able to experience it, and Rogue has that loving touch that makes me feel the light of day like never before. I mumble as I twist in midair and cling to another branch that alters my course. I guess I am selfish for wanting them so much. As I head toward the United States, I think, I am such an ass for even moving in their direction, but I swear I'll stop before I reach the border. But even just taking a step toward them makes me feel more content than ever. However, I am aware that I cannot and will not get any closer than that. The amount of nonsense that has been occurring is simply becoming intolerable. I've woken up enough times with a kunai stuck in a tree trunk after deciding to defend myself. I retort bitterly, deep enough to cause death. I consider how that might have been one of the girls or one of the others. If I hadn't been strong enough to withstand the girls' attempts to persuade me to stay, it might have come to pass. The more compelling reason I left was probably the way they like to sleep next to me at night. They would be in greater danger from that than from being in a room with a rabid dog. I would have been a true monster if their delicate forms had been even close to me. In a room full of concealed weapons, no less. As I quicken my pace, I murmur, and that is something that I intend to never be. However, I know deep down that's a lie. Someone who has caused death the way I have might actually be the monster that others want to be, even if they had been motivated by a higher good. The idea of how much killing had to be done still makes me angry. However, I'm not sure who the blade is aimed at, who the bastard that had to be removed, or who the god who is amused by all of this is. None of that compares to the hate I have of my lack of control. These intense feelings are likely the reason I'm so distraught. It is exhausting for me to experience so many conflicting emotions at once. It is exhausting for them to experience love and joy only to encounter hatred and hatred. Shinobi, in particular, take great satisfaction in their ability to regulate their emotions when needed. Without emotional control, I won't be able to answer questions, which is probably why I'm having so much trouble in the first place. I smirk as I feel my will rise once more and exclaim, even though I have had worse things in my way before, and just like those I'll break this. Agony, pain, anger, these are all things I have been dealt with, and with each one I have had hope and risen to face them down and embrace the rewards they leave behind. This time, though, it will mean much more than before, because now I have found my reasons to live after years without one, and no one will take it from me. The point of view of Kitty, her history class. As I sit through the teacher's PowerPoint on a topic I really don't want to think about, I think, life without you nearby is so dull. Usually, I would pay attention even if I didn't enjoy the topic. I feel like a piece of myself is missing, though, because I can't now. I also know what it is, or more accurately, who it is. It's difficult to ignore, though, even though I know it's him, his absence is as intense as the sensation of your hand being close to an open flame. Nevertheless, I am aware that Naruto's presence is identical to his when he is present, but when he's here, it feels like a warm embrace rather than burning or hurting. He relieves you of your worries in ways that are so straightforward that you find yourself laughing at how easy it is. When did I start thinking about all of this so much? Really, what about anything? In my mind, I wonder. In all honesty, I had never been the type to consider a subject in such depth. But I've noticed all of these changes since Naruto entered my life. Even if they were occurring gradually, they helped me to see the wider picture. I suppose it's because of Naruto's disposition toward certain things. He's one of those people who will listen to you without passing judgment, that is, unless you target him or someone he cares about. That's probably why he's preferred by the majority of the male recruits when they're being taught. Whenever they need assistance, he can always provide it. I smile as I remind myself that, and they always end up blowing something up, but when the time comes, he knows how to behave responsibly. That's what he's been doing to me. I suppose he's assisting me in maturing, but as he mentioned, his friend Lee used to relate it to maintaining your youthful self. However, I suppose I'm not the only person who has fallen victim to the blonde's ways. The way that Rogue and I respect one another has undoubtedly changed as well. Ever since our first encounter, she and I have never truly agreed. We had been somewhat like the wind and the earth, if you will. We had never made a concerted effort to connect. It seems as though we never had a good reason to try to understand each other. However, all it had taken was for him to enter our lives and completely upend everything. With his actions, he had caught everyone off guard. However, his captivating ways had drawn us both into his soul. Even if he denies it, it helped us both develop. I suppose it's also for the best. I suppose Rogue has become the best friend I've ever desired, even if she takes more extreme measures, ways that I had doubts about before. But now I understand why, primarily due to Naruto's demonstrated effectiveness. I suppose that in addition to helping me grow up, he has taught me how to be myself. Let me express my opinions without fear of his opinion of me changing. I pick up my abandoned pencil and paper and write just one line: return soon. Who knows? We all possess abilities that others cannot comprehend. Perhaps this message will reach him. If not, I suppose I'll just follow his wishes, leave him a number of voicemails, and he will definitely return your call. Yes, it sounds exactly like what he would do. I suppose he does influence me after all. I simply cannot wait passively. High above on one of the numerous branches of the nearby forest is Naruto POV. When it comes to trying to take me down, these demons are defiantly eccentric. They would definitely be more insane than Orochimaru, I can assure you. I had nearly reached the border without any problems after navigating through the more densely forested areas. The damn things came at me with full force until I stopped moving. I nearly broke down there simply because of the pressure these demons were exerting. I could feel their cold breath and see them so clearly. They're gripping my neck to catch my breath. I still need to rest against this tree's trunk. The actual physical pain I experienced wasn't the worst part. It was the mentally draining pain that accompanied every visit. It has always been. I hear Kyuubi yell in frustration, but this is new to me. Kit, stop resisting my chakra. I know you have some pride, but this isn't the time to take after me. Besides, I thought you took down the barriers. I reply in an equally irritated tone, but we both know that our annoyance isn't directed at one another but rather at the damned curse. I'm not resisting, you blasted fox. You know as well as I do that I took those barriers down since I was 14. I thought you were messing with me. Damn it. Is the fox's curse, and I can feel him saturating the cage he works in with chakra. Although the chakra could undoubtedly spread, it was diluted by the time it got to where Q was sending it. This was definitely bad news because it didn't happen very often. This only occurred during the majority of my fights with Akatsuki, Sasuke, and Orochimaru. However, at the time, it was because I needed to spread the chakra to get my wounds healed. I yell, "Wait up, Kyuubi," forcing him to reduce the pace of his chakra flow. I close my eyes and slowly inhale deeply. I feel for my chakra gradually in the location where it usually is in order to support Kyuubi's healing abilities. I take hold of my chakra and gradually start to release it from its confinement. This time, I only experience mild discomfort. However, the other presence that I sense connected to my chakra is what really frightens me. However, the presence almost completely disappears as I open my mouth to speak, leaving me perplexed. As I search for the presence once more, I say, "Q, please tell me you felt that too?" To the best of my knowledge, Q is the only person who resides in my body, not since I was abandoned by my parents all those years ago. I hear the fox murmuring to himself, "Yeah, I felt it kind of hard to when I'm the only one supposed to be in here." It felt very strange, yet familiar but much colder. I wait impatiently for a response, asking in an irritated tone, "So care to share with me?" The moron might know the solution to my issue, but he's keeping it to himself. It's nothing, trust me. I doubt I would have missed anything of that caliber. Besides, if you don't know what's in your body now, then neither do I. So if you're looking for an answer, I'm sorry, but I got nothing, I hear the fox say while he's inside. In the hopes of getting some actual responses this time, I ask, "Fine then, did you find anything on your little hunt through my mind? Before whatever is affecting me keeps getting stronger?" "Nothing but memories and dreams floating around," was how the demon inside of me responded. I was hoping for more, so I ask, "That's it? This curse, demon, plaque, whatever you want to call it, has persisted for far too long, and despite all of our efforts, we are ultimately producing results that are bullshit. I'm sorry kid, but there is no way for me to trace it like this. All your conflicting emotions have my senses going out of control. It's getting harder for me to control my power, and you can sense it too, can you? Your power becoming more recessive to your touch. Called out to Kyuubi as I noticed him start to move around inside his cage. Damn it. I knew that my emotions would fail me now, the one time I need the control I've gained over the years. As I take another deep breath to try to calm myself, I respond, yeah, ever since this morning, I feel it getting farther away from me, becoming more hostile towards my attempts to rein it in. Though I had thought that it was just my state that was putting my readings off, why had nothing like this ever occurred in all the years I had been a shinobi and a Hokage? To have never had to deal with this, there is no way for me to understand these acts, the retaliations. Kid, I'm not sure how long we have left before this poses a threat to your health. I know you already believe that you pose a risk, but pay attention to me, kid. If this keeps up and we lose control over our chakras, everything that is in our path is in ruins. So, what should we do now? Launch an offensive? Fox, we've already done that. Even though I feel the pain, I don't care about it anymore. I yell as my chakra starts to build up. How are we supposed to fight this if we don't know what we're up against? Every opponent I've faced, I've at least known they were real, that I could harm them if necessary. I am aware that we have Gaki. Do you believe I'm a fool? Although we've already done that, we're going to try again without your feelings. It's the only way to find this, even though I know you detest being that way. I hear the fox yell, I need you to kill all your emotions, even if it's just for a few seconds. That's all we need. Shinobi principles were supposed to be derived from this, and I have always hated it, but I have also enjoyed its unique qualities. I am one of the few who have succeeded in killing your emotions, even though I did so accidentally until I learned to control it at will, though I still detest using it to feel nothing. To feel no compassion or love is like being dead, a hollow husk, I suppose, but one with a purpose. As much as I hated to feel that way, I knew I had very little choice but to go through with it because I had to. No need to end this now. When? I only asked, and he knew that I would follow through because he understood how much I needed to be freed from this curse and that he had likely needed it himself. After taking a moment to collect his thoughts, Kyuubi replied, if it's feasible, we'll do it tomorrow night. However, there was no reason to wait. I could do it now. Why hold off? I expressed my belief that there was no need to wait and that this plan could succeed. We must wait for the highest possible level of chakra replenishment, the fox replied, and we need you to be fully rested. I suppose he made sense because I was getting ahead of myself. I needed to calm down because I knew he was correct. My body hurt, and that if we did it now without any planning, it might result in pain and suffering. I suppose there is nothing I can do, I yelled. I'll just set up camp here, and he nodded before he started to align a portion of his chakra with mine as he slept. Deciding it was time for me to take a break, I looked up at the sky and noticed that light was already disappearing, so I dropped from the tree branch and sat against the trunk, grabbing protein bars and a bottle of water from my backpack and starting to eat, but I still struggled to stay motionless. I had nearly put an end to this misery, that after all of this suffering, I would finally have the opportunity to end it because I won't just sit back and let this break apart my life. No, I'll shatter it. POV rogues, the Institute's corridors. The others are getting ready for bed, and it's already getting dark outside, but I can't make myself go to sleep. I can't stop feeling this emptiness, which I know can only be filled by one person. How can one boy get under my skin and make me miss him so much, to make everything else pale in comparison? I murmur to myself as I walk down the hallway without a destination, but I also know that I want him back to be close to me, to help me feel less worried about him, to be able to touch him, to hear his voice, and to have him tell me that he's okay. He assured me that he would be fine and safe, and I believe him, but I'm still concerned because he didn't move like himself, which is probably why so many recruits trust him and actually pay attention to him. He also trains them well, so I'm sure he would fit in perfectly in the army. However, the blonde idiot has already led his own, and despite everything he's been through in his past, he still manages to smile, even though I know that most people would have broken down long ago from the bits and pieces of his life that he has shared. I can tell that he has had to make decisions that shouldn't have been made by someone his age, which is why I'm worried and angry that he still has to deal with what's happening now. I turn to the right and whisper to myself, if only I could help more. I feel useless as I watch the dreary days go by, waiting for him to return or for the night to take over, hoping that he will return before I wake up. These are things that I don't want to do, things that I am starting to resent, even though he had kept saying that the mere thought of us would help him. I can do that, but I want to do more, and I can tell that Kitty can hardly tolerate that thought. I turn to see Kitty standing across from me as I hear a familiar voice yell, "Rogue," from down the hallway. I reply, "Hey Kitty," noticing that she is holding herself together with an arm around her waist. "Have you heard anything from him?" She responds to my question, "No, he won't pick up his phone again," and then she sighs. "Though I left him a few voicemails," she adds after the fact. I approach her and lean against the wall, hoping to improve our moods by calling out, You know, I'm beginning to think he's using this as an excuse to avoid us." Leaning against the opposite wall, she adds with a slight smile, "Yeah, I understand what you mean. Hey, maybe he's out there with some other girls." "Well, if he is, I suppose we could always neuter him when he returns," I add with a slight smile. But then we both start laughing together. I suppose Kitty has become my best friend since we first met, but our laughter is interrupted when we hear a scream coming from Aurora's room. We nod to one another and head down the hallway to her room, thinking, what else could go wrong? As Kitty leads us through the door. Naruto Pov. Mid-afternoon the following day. I sincerely hope that this madness will stop today. To be released from all of this suffering and torment. Now I have to go back home to make sure nothing has happened because the security has already been breached. My only regret is that I broke the seals surrounding the institute. Although the seals themselves are still in place, Kyuubi's chakra had spread during my stay there and the subsequent attack, rendering them inoperable. Even so, I can only blame myself. If only I had exercised greater self-control. As Q keeps probing my mind for any hostile movements, I hear him say, "Forget about it, kid. Remember, shit happens, so just deal with it." As I consider my surroundings, I respond, "I can't till I know that they're safe. It would be ideal to end it all here." I had stumbled upon it by chance. It was a large, open field that, strangely, had no vegetation. Despite knowing the answer, the fox asked, "You mean the girls, right?" "Yes, along with the others," is my response to the question. The fox went on to try to reason with me, saying, "Calm down, you know that they can take care of themselves and you know that those teachers of theirs won't let them get hurt." "It still doesn't matter. I need to get back," I say. I am aware that he is merely attempting to relax me before we start talking about everything. I can't bring myself to do this, though I can't help but feel tense, even though I've tried to stop my thoughts from coming back, even if it's just to avoid the necessity. All of Kitty's voicemails and the ones Rogue sent me last night have been listened to, and the desire to be close to them is more intense than ever, leaving me with an insatiable desire to be close to them, to smell their aroma, to taste their flavor. God damn it, he didn't. I hear the fox start to make excuses because he knows I am aware of his behavior. "Kid, you need to focus. I can't have you give in to your romantic feelings or have you give in to your anger." As my rage starts to build up beneath the surface of my skin, I ask, "Kyuubi, do I even want to know if I'm right?" The damn kitsune responds, "I think it's best if we forget about it, but I know better than to ignore it. I see from the sky that I should have enough time to investigate." The fox curse is the last sound I hear as I slowly close my eyes and allow myself to enter my mental landscape. Naruto's point of view and mindscape. I open my eyes slowly and realize that I'm standing in front of the prison of the blasted fox. I can't see him anywhere when I look into the darkness of his confinement. I grow impatient with his game and command, "You idiot, get out here." In order to accompany me, the fox releases some of his chakra to create a smaller version of himself. "I guess I'll deal with it now," is what I hear him say. However, knowing that he's essentially in it now, I strike out and put my hands around his replica throat as soon as he's finished. I hiss, "You bastard, what did you do now?" as I tighten my hold and only let go when I've had enough. "Nothing much," the Q says nonchalantly, but he stops short as I start to back away for his throat. "Well, now that I think of it, maybe I did." I say, "Take me now, Kyuubi," in a firm voice. After giving in, the fox envelops us in his chakra and leads us into a room without a door, with dim lighting all around. In my mind, this was a special room, possibly the most significant one that only Q, I, and whoever we wanted to bring here could get to. This is because, in contrast to the other rooms and hallways in this labyrinth, which have existed since my birth, this one was constructed designed to contain what may be my most valuable possession to date. I walk to the middle of the room and mutter, "Kyuubi, you fool." Each of the 4 glowing orbs in the middle of the room, which are the size of my Rasengan, represents a different person. As though with free will, the orbs start to circle my extended right arm. The one nearest my arm had a luminous white core, but it was encircled by darkness, with crimson cracks extending from the white's edges to the darkness's extremities. This one is a reflection of who I am compared to my own. The other 3 are far less chaotic and much more pure. The next one contained a mixture of light purple in the middle encircled by violet, and I felt warm inside with each pulse. The original plan was for just these 2 to live here. However, a new member has joined the group. Kitty, who exuded joy with each pulse and had a sky blue core surrounded by ocean blue. The last one is Rogue, which has an emerald green hue and is encircled by a forest green that pulsates with life. I turned to face the fox that was standing back and asked sharply, "Why?" These orbs were pieces of our souls. Not just for show, a symbol of the relationships I had with each of the girls. However, they could only be accomplished if the other person's soul so desired. It also brought with it other attributes, like the intimacy we all shared with one another, enabling us to connect with one another on a completely new level, but also enables us to sense one another's anguish. The old demon looked directly into my eyes and said, "To save you from your own self-loathing, kid. Let it go, kid, it wasn't your fault." I stare at the violet orb as it gets closer to my face and whisper, "Of course it was Kyuubi. I dragged her into it. If it hadn't been for me, she could have survived. Her death is something I will never forgive myself for, despite my best efforts to move on from the past. Not a single day goes by that I don't remember her," I add. I know. From the fox he would see some of the pain in my eyes. Despite my best efforts to hide it, I know that he and the girls see it, even though the majority of people don't. I glance at their eyes and ask quickly, "Can they feel what's happening now?" He replied, "No, I'm blocking it right now." Even though they can usually tell when you're hiding something, was a good thing because they didn't have to endure this suffering. Explains why they can see right through everything I do. I murmur. These bits of information also helped explain why we had bonded so quickly. The demon laid down on the ground and asked nonchalantly, "You still pissed?" I nod slowly by shaking my head. I suppose I couldn't hold Q entirely responsible if his statement that their souls desired it was accurate. "You still should had asked. I was bored and was getting tired of you struggling with your choice. Beside, I knew you liked them both, so yeah." I start to leave the center and ask, "Idiot, how long has it been this way?" The damn fox grinned and said, "Since you got back from last summer break." I respond, "Teme should have told me. Since I haven't been here in a long time, however, we experience a cold embrace before we can proceed." I nod to him. Sighing, the curse apparently couldn't wait. He guides us back into the hallways while gradually encircling us with his chakra. I give him a curious look and he responds, "No need to waste time. Why don't you take us to the cage? It's your turn." I sigh and start to rip the feelings out of me, the very thing that has prevented us from pursuing our target after being in the room. It is the hardest to take away my happiness and love. However, I am able to attain the desired form after 5 minutes of struggling. One that has no life in it. I yell in a monotone, "Hurry up and help Fox." As he makes his point, the fox utters the words, "God." No matter how many times I hear it, that voice creeps me out. However, I have to agree with him, but putting that aside, now that my senses are unclouded, I allow them to reach out, and in addition to the icy aura of the phantoms, I can sense their presence from earlier. Kyuubi transports us there right away, dropping us off in a pitch black room. I've never seen one like that before. "Have you been here, Fox?" I ask, getting back to my normal self. The shrewd fox responded, "Didn't even know this was here, so what are we blowing up?" I smile and feel the room grow colder as I respond, "As soon as we find out what the heck is in here to cause it, then we can blow that up. I think I've come to the correct place. We can feel you in here." I didn't know I was piggybacking another fragmented soul than the ones I'm currently aware of, I yell. A voice that makes me uneasy says, "Of course you wouldn't. After all, you don't have to worry about any pain." Though difficult, it maintained that innocent childlike quality. I look for the source of the voice but can't find it, so I ask, "So you're the one that makes it hurt, huh?" "Figures that you would say that," is added by the voice before a childlike laugh is released. Q looks around and responds, "Well, you aren't helping much." The voice says, "Well, I am just. This time it benefits me more," and I can practically see the smile on its face. I argue that, "Just show yourself already," as I grow weary of the game and want the room to start getting brighter. My rules are my mind. Before I see my enemy's outline in front of me, the childish voice responds, "Why, if you already know who I am," prior to the room's illumination. As we see the one causing the pain, Kyuubi adds, "I knew you were fucked up, kid. I didn't think it would be anything like this, though, because I am standing in front of myself. Me when I was 10 years old." In addition, he was wearing loose-fitting trousers and a ripped red shirt. However, he appears considerably paler, with dark circles beneath his eyes. However, it was his icy eyes that had startled me the most, eyes I didn't have when I was that age. It asked me, "Ironic, isn't it?" as his tone became serious, "that I'm the one causing the pain instead of the other way around." When Q noticed that I was still immobile, he asked, "What exactly do you mean by that?" "Let me tell you exactly who I am. I am part of Naruto Namikaze, a part that suffers because of him, one that suffers so that he can keep going. You could simply call me a sacrificial pawn." The copy of myself replied to the fox, "Or did you think dear old Kyuubi did all the healing?" As I recover from the shock, I ask, "Then why are you doing this?" Q's ability to heal me both physically and mentally was, in fact, one of the things that had sustained me. "I got tired of it all," was his response as he gave me a hollow grin. "Why should I be the only one made to suffer?" Though I never was able to get this far all these years, especially since Ino started to chain my attempts down, even though she didn't know it till I found out how to control his power. Though messing with your control helps too. It ended with him staring at Kyuubi. I look him in the eye and say, "Figures that this would happen, so why keep it going this long?" I ask. His response was, "Just for fun, I mean I suffered this long, why not you?" He then laughed and said, "So you scared?" In an attempt to irritate him, I smile and respond, "No, not really." I saw him frown and then raise his right hand to cue before the fox vanished, so I suppose it worked. I glare back at him and demand, "What did you do?" "Oh, just sent him back to that cage of his, after all I might need him to end you," he says casually. When I say, "You can stop it here, I'll take your burden away," I would. As we both started to phase out, my insane replica responded, "Oh wow, but no, I think I like my way better," and as I walked out of my head, I knew that the real hell was about to start. Open field. POV Naruto. I opened my eyes to find that night had nearly arrived and it was already getting dark. I hurriedly attempted to touch the fox, but I was unable to sense anything, not even his chakra. Even so, I was aware that this pain was over. This was all I needed to survive. As I watched him morph in front of me in a red pulse, the demented replica's voice said, "Though I wonder, will you?" As I start to act more instinctively, I respond, "You should know, if you're me then you know I won't give up." He started to smile in a way that reminded me of Sasuke after he left for the snake, and I thought, "Ha ha ha, I guess so huh?" Before 4 dark figures emerged from the ground in front of him, he yelled, "Though I wonder who will have the stronger will, though I suppose I could have a little fun first." The 4 Anbu brothers stood in front of him before they all charged at me at breakneck speed. I start, "You should know something," before avoiding one and hitting the back of his head with a bone-crushing blow, prior to me giving the other person a roundhouse kick to the neck. And I'm happy when they die and then disappear like clones. However, I must suppress my joy as I sense one approaching me from behind with his blade and the other from ahead. I quickly remove a kunai from each hand and twist them at an angle so the blades will pass by. Just as they are ready to make contact, they join their brothers after I stab them each in the head. Before they can react, I finish, "I'm sick of your game," by lifting my head. The replica shook his head and then burst out laughing, saying, "Well, I guess that's what I get for sending them against the Rokudame Hokage. We're just too good." I briefly broke my tone of coldness and said to him, "You know, if you weren't insane and hell-bent on ending me, I would say that you were acting like a little brother." The soul fragment or clone, whatever it was, behaved too immaturely for me to continue. He frowned and said, "Well, being this way is your fault, you know, but it's okay because it will be enjoyable to end you." As I prepare myself and wait for him to move, I tell myself, and there went the childish innocence once again, and before I know it, he's standing in front of me, pointing a fist at my face. Behaving swiftly, I seize it before I can swing him into the air, then swiftly rise above him as I kick him in the back, sending him plummeting. I'm concerned about how he was able to move so that he could use the first level after landing on the ground. However, I was forced to stop thinking when I had to dodge a barrage of blows before I could even attempt to land my own. But be mindful of me, if the damn fool could move without leaving a trace. There's no question that he was able to use the first stage of the bloodline. However, I'm thrown to the side as soon as I reach that conclusion because I feel something hit my head. Damn it, blindsided me, I think, as I quickly regain my footing and just in time to counter with a strike that broke through and land on his torso. I yell as I gather chakra for the Rasengan. "Give up, you may be cruel and cold, no to mention insane, but you can't take me on even when I'm in this state." However, I'm shocked to see it gradually disintegrating as I glare back at him. I hear him laughing. "I guess you're right, this form is far too weak to deal with you, so it's a good thing that I have so much insurance on this fight, and just forget about using your chakra. You may have the experience, but I have had years to manipulate your control," he calls out with a twisted smile as crimson chakra slowly begins to bubble around him and forms the shroud. I quickly try to gather chakra, but all I feel is it trickling through like a dam, and I wouldn't have time to form a half-decent jutsu with this amount. "Up to 3 tails, the idiot yelled. "What's wrong?" Struggling. Now that I couldn't allow him to collect any more tails, I really didn't have much of an option. However, Hugh was probably having trouble maintaining control. Behaving swiftly, I started to move around him and deliver as many blows as I could using the first level of my bloodline, but his tails blocked or waved them off. I knew this would be hell, even though I managed to push him away as he started chakra branching and grabbed me in the clawed hand. He taunted me with his dumb joke, "Oh, what's wrong, need a hand?" He tightened his grip before slamming me to the chilly ground. But he wasn't finished yet. The force left web-like cracks all around me. "So you scared yet?" I find it difficult to say, "Fuck you," because that blow left me gasping for air and covered in blood. But before I could say anything more, he came to my side and struck me in the other direction, throwing me across the field. However, I managed to get back on my feet and regain some balance before the pain forced me to drop to my knees. "Maybe I do have too much of an advantage," he was saying loudly. Nah, after all preparation is the shinobi's way, well that, and don't let the enemy get any advantage. I waited for my wounds to heal while I listened to his digressions, but they were taking far too long, and I knew the moron would attack any moment. However, the options were either too few or too many. I start to gather chakra in my hand and start swirling it after giving it another go. Seeing my only opportunity, I decide to take a chance and charge forward, screaming, "Shut up you damn fucker." Rasengan. I continue my attack, hammering him with devastating punches and kicks. However, as soon as I realize that all of his wounds have already healed, I am flung back and curse profusely. Even though that Rasengan was weak, it still ought to have caused more harm. I suppose I now understand why you had detested the Namikaze. Due to our speed and Jinchuriki power, I suppose I understand why fighting me irritates people, and being in this weakened state isn't helping. My assassin mumbles, "Well, that's too bad, I guess you really are done," as he moves ahead of me and grabs me by the neck with his chakra tail. I wonder what'll happen to me after I kill you. Well, only one way to find out, though. I want to ask you one final question. Are you scared now? I choke under the pressure he applies to his grip, whispering, "You keep saying you're me. You should know the answer no." He pierced my left leg with one of his tails and my right side with the other, saying, "Well, that's your choice, to be stubborn till the end. Well, it's been nice knowing you." With that, he released my neck and proceeded to pierce my torso. "Actually, for being you and putting up with everything, no it hasn't." Was this the intended outcome, allowing everything to crumble and fade into obscurity? In addition, he held on to a lot of things. I'll give him credit for masterfully organizing everything, from controlling my power sources to making me physically weak from fatigue. This was not how I wanted it to end. As I struggle against the tails, I mumble, "I swore to return, but I can tell that I'm only making things worse because I'm in more pain." The bastard is always talking about pain. If his actions cause me pain, I'm afraid he was taking everything, but I was certain that I wasn't. Was it his reference to retaliation, or was fear what he was attempting to accomplish, to make me feel everything that he had gone through? I simply knew that I was disappointing them, and despite my efforts to gain power and struggle, I was still unable to. He teased me, saying, "It's okay Naruto, it's almost over even if you say you're not afraid." I didn't really care. It just brought up more memories, even if they were unpleasant. Go back to Naruto's normal point of view at age 16. As they concluded their session in aiding the ramen-loving idiot's memories, Ino reassured the taller blonde from behind, saying, "There's no reason to be afraid, Naru-kun. I'm right here." As he relished her embrace, the Hokage-bound ninja replied, "I told you I'm not afraid, Ino-chan." She saw the expression in his eyes and responded, "You know it's okay for you to be afraid, you don't have to be the support for everyone all the time." Naruto grinned and said, "I guess so, huh? But don't worry, this won't keep me down for long." The teenage girl smiled and said, "I know it won't, just don't try to hide your feelings from me, okay?" With a sheepish expression, the Kyuubi's host said, "Well, I guess there is one thing." The girl put her head on his shoulder and said, "And that is?" "I'm afraid a final flashback. Naruto's point of view." I heard the moron ask me, "Huh? What was that? If he's me, why doesn't he realize that I dislike repeating myself? Say it louder." This jerk was really starting to irritate me. He gives me that insane smile as I slowly raise my head to face him and say, "I'm afraid. But not of you, not my past," I add, watching him become enraged. "I'm afraid of not being able to live a life I want. A life I'm not willing to give up yet." "Bastard," is what I hear him mutter as he is about to hit me, but he stops when he finally senses it and turns to face my hand. As I continue to reclaim the chakra he stole from Kyuubi and me, I add, "Seems you can only manipulate my chakra for a limited amount of time. I wonder how Q will respond." He keeps asking, how I held all the power. "You were half dead," as he tries to flee, but I restrain him. I respond with a smile, pumping out my chakra that surrounds us and starting to send it towards my palm. "I just have a better reason to live for. 3 actually, so sorry I won't be going anywhere today." I say. I pull my hand back before attacking Rasengan, which causes him to phase in and out until he is reduced to nothing more than a small amount of glowing white smoke that I gather in my hand until it disappears. "You know I am sorry for everything you endured. Your pain was supposed to be ours, but I let you take it all, so now I'll take it all on my shoulder, but now I have to end it." I ask aloud, "Did you do it?" in the hopes that he will hear me as I drop to one knee. Kyuubi responds, "Yeah, damn bastard is back with the rest of your soul." I smile and say, "Good, you lazy bastard, make yourself useful," as I get back up after realizing that my major wounds were healed by the final power surge. "Hey, I was held against my will and I held back the other tails still," he's saying. "Yeah, well, why didn't you hold back the others too, and this could have been over right away?" I replied. For a second there I thought I was done for. I look up to see that the sun is up, but it's still quite early, maybe 5 or 6 in the morning, and I could really use a bed. Whatever shit's done, so let's get on with our day, he says. I give him a foxy smile and ask, hey Q, are you thinking what I'm thinking? I feel like I deserve to enjoy myself again after going through that ordeal. If it includes beating you till you're out cold, then yes, he replied. Besides, you won't make it with the chakra you have now. It's like what, 2-3 hours if you push yourself. I counter that he had a point when he said, give me some chakra then. Between exhaustion and the fight, I was a complete mess. You owe me anyway for the stunt you pulled with the bonds. As I feel his chakra enveloping me, he grumbles, fine, take it, but if you tear your muscles apart I am not healing them. I hastily grab my abandoned bag containing my supplies and sealed bike. I respond, that's okay, your chakra will do it for you, and then I take off, making the most of my bloodline. Naruto's balcony, Naruto's point of view, and the institute. I guess Q was correct about the muscles tearing when I landed with a thud on my balcony, but by the time I tried to move, I could already feel them starting to mend. In addition, my healing process has returned to normal, so it shouldn't take much longer. Even though it was worthwhile, I couldn't wait to see them again now that I know I can be close to them, and if I waste any more time, I'll be damned as I catch my breath. I push some chakra into the balcony lock to get it to open, and it does get up slowly before I hobble to my bed and drop my bag, which makes a little thump and makes me moan. However, I had been so exhausted that I had failed to notice the 2 bodies that had already taken up residence in my bed. Seeing the 2 of them makes me smile, so I playfully tell myself, ignore the perverted thoughts, Namikaze. As I recall my Junin clothes being ripped to shreds and smeared with blood, I think, shit, the blood. I try to make as little noise as possible as I move slowly toward my closet. However, as I turn around, I put on one of the girls' pants that they had dropped on the ground during their change. I keep saying in my mind, shit, 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 because I know that if I don't, I'll wake the girls. As I fall back toward the bed, I'm relieved they maintain some distance between them because I twist a little to land without injuring them, and almost immediately after I land, I feel them startle awake, then gasp a little, and I'm in possession of 2 kunai that are pointed at Naruto Jr. I put my hand behind my neck and smile sheepishly, saying, I see you found the hidden kunai, sorry for waking you up. I worry when I don't hear back, so I sit up to get rid of the dangerous objects, but as soon as I get them away from me safely, I'm tackled again. It appears that they have finally recovered from the initial shock of my presence. Rogue presses her face against my neck and yells at me, you idiot, do you have any idea how worried we've been? As she clings to me more tightly, I was wondering when she would join in, and without a word from you, were you trying to get us ticked off? And as I laugh and try to gather my thoughts, I simply can't contain myself any longer. I finally gather myself when I hear Kitty whisper, hey Rogue, I think you went mad, as though I wasn't even there. I'm sorry, it's just that I'm just glad to be back. I start by drawing them nearer, and I'm sorry for making you worry and not calling back. It's just that things were hectic to say the least, and at time I did feel that I was mad. Rogue asks me, so you're good now, right? And clings to me as though I'm going to vanish. Even though the bonds would explain their intense reaction, I'll have to explain something to them later. Yeah, everything is good, I respond. I swore I would be back, didn't I? With a smile that convinced me it was worth going through hell, Kitty asks, yeah, just took your sweet time in getting back, huh? With a slight smile, I respond, not on purpose though, but I'm back and I don't intend to leave for a while, at least not without the both of you. I laugh as I finish, feeling Charles attempting to enter my thoughts. I hear him say, I see you have finally returned, in a courteous manner. I apologize for the wait, but I suppose so, just needed time. I calmly explain it's okay. Naruto, I'm just happy to see you again, he continues, and welcome home. As I lay in the arms of the 2 most significant people in my life, knowing that the 3rd is looking down on me, I reply, it's good to be back, it really is. I kept living because I wanted to be able to enjoy moments like these, and it was worth it.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.